What are your all-you-can-eat buffet horror stories? I bossed at a slightly nicer restaurant. On Fridays and Saturdays, we offer a prime rib and crab leg buffet, among a salad bar, hot and cold entrees, and a dessert bar. It's honestly pretty nice, and our buffet runner keeps anyone from doing ungodly things to the buffet. But the one incident that will always stand out to me was when this family of 5 came in. From the moment they came in to the moment they left, they ate as many crab legs as they possibly could. Their server and I were clearing plates off as fast as we could, but every time we'd return it, it seemed like another mountain of crab leg shells would appear in front of each member of that family. I know not how they ate so much, and I honestly can't recall if they ate anything besides the crab. Piles upon piles of shells were left upon the table after they left. It was truly a sight to behold. What's more is after I wiped down the table and came back with settings, I had to get another rag to wipe down the table again because something in the crab leg juice combined with our sanitizer and left a nice milky residue upon the table. Delicious. When I leave this job, I'll never be able to look at crab legs the same way. I had a buddy who was 400 pounds and the guy could put away some food. He went to a casino buffet that was one of the higher end ones that had crab legs and steak. On his 4th or 5th plate stacked full of crab legs, the manager came out and gave him $250 in free slot play to leave the buffet. There were 2 other guys there and none of them were under 300 pounds. They killed a metric frick ton of food between them, and my friend was putting those other 2 guys to shame. The buffet was higher end, so it was $50 a person, but they easily all ate probably 3 to 4 times that, and my friend probably ate 8 to 10 times worth that in food. He then went on to win just over $100 with that free slot play as well. If you can't beat the casinos at the games, beat them at the bar or buffet. It would have been sick if it held out for more. The frick you talking about, boss? I'm just getting started. I'm gonna surf and turf this motherfricker into the ground unless I see 4 of those vouchers. Years ago, I worked at an all-you-can-eat country buffet in South Carolina. I was a busboy. One day I went to a table. It was a mess, as per usual. It looked to be a large family or group of families of about 12 people or so. The thing that stuck in my memory, though, is that whenever they'd finished with what they were going to eat, they'd scrape their plate and use it again. Scrape their plates onto the floor next to the chairs. So next to each chair there was a 6 to 18-inch pile of chicken bones, crab legs, mashed potatoes, and remnants of baked potatoes, among other things. It was just disgusting. I mean, I know that this was a thing that feasting nobles supposedly did in the Middle Ages, or maybe that was throwing the bones over the shoulders? I just don't understand how this time-traveling Duke and his family ended up in South Carolina of all places. A woman came in with 2 of her kids and had a pretty regular meal. You pay when you leave at our place, and she decided to sneak out with her younger daughter before paying, leaving her underage son alone at the table. We caught on pretty quickly and sent someone after her, who found her in her car in the parking garage, waiting for her son to come as well. She refused to come back and pay, so we had to keep her son hostage until the police came to handle the situation. What some people will do to their kids, I swear. We also found out from her son that she'd stolen one of the manager's key cards and they'd regularly come into the hotel and use the card to go swimming on the top floor pool. She was smart, I'll give her that, but still. My first job was as a dishwasher in an all-you-can-eat fried catfish buffet. People are animals, especially the ones that get far more food off the buffet than they can eat. Then they take the leftovers and pile them on a plate or tray, cover it in ketchup or tartar sauce, then pour their iced tea over the top of that. A lot of the people who did that got at least 2 plates like that a night. Nothing made me hate people like bussing or dishwashing on buffet night at the pizza place I worked at in college. What the frick? Serving the after-church crowd is pretty high up there, though. Jesus Christ himself would have never changed a dirty diaper on the table and left it there, okay, lady? I went as a customer to a golden Corral. I'm walking to the chocolate fountain, and 3 little girls stepped in front of me, and all 3 of them just went hands deep in the fountain. The family was the first table by the fountain, and all they did was laugh about how cute it was. Employees turned it off immediately. Say what you will about Golden Corral, but they definitely don't play around when it comes to their chocolate fountains. Feels like every story that I hear about them is, fountain was closed because some little crapbag decided to Augustus Gloop the thing. Sure, you might find boogers in their meatloaf, but if someone sneezes on the fountain side of the restaurant, that thing gets shut down like it's Madagascar. The buffet where I live got shut down for serving coyote meat and labeling it as other meats. I picked up some fish and chips recently. I saw that they had all-you-can-eat on Wednesdays. So I asked, what's the most that someone ever… and I was cut off. 18 pieces of fish and 3 plates of fries every single Wednesday, she said, holding up this huge platter to demonstrate the plate size for the chips. So he eats that exact order every week? Yep, and then he goes to different all-you-can-eats every day of the week. He got banned from the Chinese place down the road. My parents owned an all-you-can-eat buffet, and I was there every day of my life from 4 a.m. to 2 p.m. My favorite horror story is when a couple came in to eat, obviously. They loved crab legs, and every time my mum puts them out, they took everything. Also, just a reminder, crab legs are expensive. Forget the other customers, these two just took it and ate it all. So they're there for maybe 2 hours now and it's getting dark. They've eaten through at least a week's stock of crab legs and my mum finally decides it's enough. She stops putting it out in the buffet and brings individual plates to the customers who wanted it but couldn't get any due to this couple. The couple was livid. They literally flipped the chairs at their table, flipped their plates, bowls, cups, and completely trashed their area. Food was all over the floor, the tables, the chairs. Sticky soda was dripping into the carpet. They left in a hurry, but someone caught their license plate. We called the cops, and I think they charged them with something. I can't remember the aftermath details clearly because I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I'm 20 now. I just remember looking at the mess and feeling really angry that my sister and I had to clean it up with our mum. It was a family-run business, so we didn't have much help. Anyway, that's my horror story. The end. We had a Chinese buffet shut down for a health code violation, which was the employee was cutting veggies while taking a dump. To this day, I still wonder if that means the guy brought a bucket into the kitchen or veggies into the crapper, and honestly, I don't know which is worse. At one point, myself and 2 other family members worked at a Golden Corral, each in a different section, because small towns don't have a lot of job options for high school or college-age kids. I worked in the bakery, which was surprisingly low in horror stories other than the chaos that remained after a large group of children came through. My brother worked the steak section. He got these regulars who would tip him pretty well if he'd prepare blue steaks for them. The very idea of ordering blue steaks from a buffet just, makes me gag. My cousin worked the salad bar. Management would require her to keep seafood items on the bar for long after the point where they'd be safe to consume. I think the record was chilled shrimp from Mother's Day that stayed for over a week and a half. They finally caved and let her toss them when a customer complained about the smell. Oh, sweet God. And the fact that they didn't change the buffet until then implies that people were happily eating the shrimp there right up until that point, and presumably chucking their guts out in the bathroom afterwards. That's our second Golden Corral mention here, a restaurant I hadn't heard of until today and will probably now steer clear of. Not a buffet, but I worked at a pizza bar/parlor that offered a lunch buffet of endless pizza. The lunch ran from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. This gentleman comes in, I think he was homeless. He serves up a sky-high plate of pizza and just goes to town. He stayed from the beginning to the very end to make sure he got his money's worth. Well, his body didn't appreciate being stuffed like a piñata of pizza. He got up and waddled fast to the bathroom, and next thing I know, I'm being told that he had liquid crap trailing behind him to the bathroom and inside the same room. I was informed by my boss about the incident. I told him I was just heading out for a break. I was not about to clean that up. Not a worker, but I went to Hometown Buffet, and the kid in front of me was slightly shorter than the buffet bar, but had his hands in the yellow Jello, just massaging it. Then his mum came by and snatched him away, but didn't say anything while a guy came and made himself a bowl of Jello. 10-year-old me was too appalled to say anything. I haven't eaten Jello since then. I was once at an old country buffet, waiting patiently to get some mac and cheese. The kid in front of me piled his plate high and then started tapping the serving spoon to get all of the cheesy goodness free from the confines of the spoon. Once he was satisfied with his handiwork, he licked said spoon clean. I didn't have any mac and cheese and I haven't been back since. I didn't work at an all-you-can-eat buffet, but my sister did. The buffet itself was on the first floor, so you had to either take the stairs or the elevator to your seat. Once there was a lady who was carrying a tray with a whole lot of stuff on it downstairs. Glasses, plates, and a whole lot more junk. My sister asked the lady if she needed any assistance, to which the lady replied, "You assume because I'm fat I need help? My sister didn't react. A few seconds later, the lady fell down the stairs, there was blood and food everywhere. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I had a coworker that briefly managed Orion's buffet. He said it was fairly common for people to gorge themselves and then purge in the restroom and start eating again so that they could get their money's worth. So I work in an all-you-can-eat using tablets. This is, according to my boss, based on a Japanese kind of restaurant. We serve mostly Asian food, from Chinese to Japanese and even some Korean. The premise is that people order their food in rounds and then we bring the food to their table when it's ready. We always warn customers beforehand that if they leave food behind because they ordered too much, they'll still have to pay, depends on what they left behind. We've seen people try the weirdest stuff if it comes to not paying. People dumping food in their handbags, people shoving it in their mouths, then going to the loo and flushing it, putting hair on it and blaming us for it. We've seen them pull this stuff on camera, and when we actually catch them doing it, they blame us for it and refuse to pay. Someone let it come down to the police to sort it out sometimes. There have been multiple occasions on which they were involved to solve the problem for just €5. I guess some people's greed has no extent. A college friend works at a Chinese buffet. He said they caught a regular dipping pizza in the wonton soup, like in the queue and not at his table and eating it right there at the buffet. Bite, dip, bite, dip, bite, dip. After the 4th time in a month he did it, management finally kicked him out. Not a worker, but I once saw a grown man have a childlike meltdown over the fact that he showed up to soup plantation too late and missed out on the biscuits and gravy. A long time ago, my mum and I picked a friend of hers up and we went to a local Chinese food buffet. This place had a thing where you could get a pound of food for $5 in a takeout container instead of sitting and eating at the restaurant if you want, so that was our plan. The 3 of us were browsing around the buffet line with our takeout containers, adding what we wanted to them, and then I noticed that my friend's mum was doing something frickin' disgusting. He was eating a chicken wing, like right in front of the buffet line, hiding his face behind his takeout container. And then he took the chicken bone and put it back in the buffet tray. I walked over to my mum and told her what he was doing, and at first she thought I was joking. So she walked over to him and now he's standing there eating a slice of watermelon right off the buffet and then putting the rind back in the tray. So my mum was like, "What the frick are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I do this all the time. They never notice." Of course, both me and mum are panicking, worried that they're going to call the cops or something because of this idiot. We basically pretended not to know him and continued to fill up our containers the right way. After a couple of minutes, one of the employees walks up to my mum and tells her that they noticed what the guy was doing, and they noticed we were also uncomfortable about it and didn't intend to blame us. But they warned her that if she doesn't get him to pay for the food in his container and to leave immediately, they'll be calling the cops. So of course my mum tells him that we need to go, and he just brushes it off like, "I don't care, they're not going to do anything." Well, me and my mum walked up to the front, paid for our containers, apologized, and walked out and left him there. A minute later, you could see and hear him shouting at the staff. He throws his container on the ground and food splatters everywhere. He storms out, shouting insults as he leaves, and of course gives them a, "I'm never coming back." To which they reply, "You're not allowed in here no more, we'll call the cops." So we're standing out by the car waiting for him, and of course we yell at him for being a piece of crap. We get in the car, and the next thing you know, this mother fricker starts pulling chicken wings and Chinese donuts out of his frickin' pockets and eating them. We dropped him off at home and never spoke to him again. That is the definition of one of those moments in life where you realize that you need new friends. I have to believe that maybe you hadn't hung out with him that much before if you didn't realize that something was a bit quirky about him. I managed a buffet in a casino in Reno for a few months. Had this family come in, mum, dad, 2 little kids. I got called over to the table because the mum had chucked up on her plate the table and wanted us to take it away and clean things up. I asked if she was okay, and she said she always blows chunks when she eats cheese. She had gotten herself an enchilada. It was a Mexican theme night. What the frick, lady? Enchiladas pretty much always have cheese. I told her I'd have to call janitorial because none of my staff was trained to handle biohazards. She didn't understand why I couldn't just take it. Janitorial came and couldn't clean up because she refused to move from the table, so janitorial left. She calls me over and starts yelling at me. Dad starts yelling too. Apparently she wanted to keep eating after chucking up, which I thought was really gross. I had them sit at another table so they could all keep eating. Janitorial came back and cleaned the other table. Finally, they go to leave and decide to make a huge scene in front of the restaurant and demand their money back. I refuse. The dad gets in my face and starts shouting that I'm just a racist white B-word, and his wife makes loads more money than I do. I call security and they storm out, pulling pictures off the wall and shattering them on the floor. And Dad also picked up a vase and broke it. The two kids were running around and banging on the walls. Security finally shows up after they ran off. I had to do a report, and they were put on the 86 list. I frickin' hate people. I was standing behind a woman at a hometown buffet. She was getting lasagna or something, basically a really cheesy pasta thing that when you lift the serving utensil, a lot of cheese hangs on. I witnessed her lift her pasta, twirl all the excess cheese that was connected around her index finger, and there was a lot, clip it off with her thumbnail and then fling it back into the pasta dish. I knew I shouldn't have been at hometown buffet in the first place, but this solidified my stance to never go back. I worked as a server at a Chinese buffet, and 4 things come to mind instantly. First, a middle-aged woman who chucked up on her table and blamed it on giving herself the wrong insulin dose. The 4 mountains of food she destroyed probably contributed too. Profusely apologized and tipped me $1. 2, I tried to pick up a dirty plate off a table that had a big pile of hibachi sauce and grease on it. The customer stopped me and said, "That's the best part," and then proceeded to drink the sauce like it was the milk after a bowl of cereal. A young mother complained to me because the crab meat and cheese that we serve on the buffet made her child sick and they threw up. Her child was an infant, not even a year old. I'm no childcare expert, but baked artificial crab meat and mozzarella can't be good for a baby. The restaurant was also raided by ICE one morning shortly before opening. The entire back of house and one of our managers were deported. Back of the house was half Chinese and half Latin American. I was just a witness, but I saw how a woman came in with about 5 kids and she made them all sit at a table while she got food, even if they seemed old enough to get it themselves. She just grabbed 2 trays, placed 3 plates on both of them, and literally poured all the chicken nuggets onto one plate, so it was a huge mountain. She did the same to the other 5 dishes and left 5 pans that were full or almost full before she came, empty. Needless to say, people were annoyed, especially when she did it multiple times with other dishes, and would glare at people if she saw them taking food from dishes that she probably wanted. At one point, I worked for a pizza place that used to have a day buffet that I'd make pizzas for. One time, 2 huge guys came in the moment we opened for the buffet. The manager on duty dropped the first 2 pizzas down on the buffet, turned to grab the next 2, turned back, and both pizzas were gone. A few minutes later, both guys walked back up and each took an entire pizza again and walked back to continue eating. They proceeded to do this over and over, grabbing an entire pizza each for themselves for the entire 3 hours that we were offering the buffet. That was one hell of a day. Okay, and to answer some of the questions I'm being asked, they were big as in morbidly obese, and Pizza Hut 2011 with regular dough. Not thin crust, medium pizzas, which were 12 inches, you get the idea. I used to work at an all-you-can-eat buffet. I'd usually be the one who cleans up after people once closing hours had passed. Essentially, I was the de facto janitor of the place. This one time, I had to clean the bathrooms after the place closed. No problems in the female bathrooms, but when I went into the male restroom, the image was burned into my retina instantly. An old man was lying on the floor, face down in a puddle of muck. Not just any sewage muck, but opaque black muck. It had the color of motor oil. It smelled awful too, like a mixture of doo-doo and rotting durian. It certainly didn't help that the liquid wasn't just smeared all over the floor, but spread across the walls too. There were frickin' handprints across the wall, presumably when the geezer was trying to stand himself up. I peered into the toilet. There was more of that brown liquid, along with chunks of corny doo-doo. There's also this fluid in your digestion called chyme. It's basically the thing right before food turns into brown, the pulpy acidic liquid with partially digested food in it. I could see scraps of chicken breast and sauce mixed in there with the pulpy chyme. As for the old guy, well, it turns out he didn't merely faint, he had actually deceased. I was in a room with a fresh, decomposing body in the stages of algor mortis. He had his pants off, presumably he had crapped himself to death, but I don't know. The guy had emptied himself like one of those cement mixers you'd see in a cartoon, except you just replace the cement with a liquid that embodies death itself. Needless to say, I, like him, emptied my digestive contents, just from the opposite end that he did. After that, I quit. Screw that place, man. There was a fairly expensive restaurant in Dallas in the 80s called Southern Kitchen. About $25 per person back then with the food served to the table. Really good stuff. They were famous for cinnamon rolls. The owner said he'd seen many women ruin expensive purses hiding those rolls. Man, I miss that place. The professor of my college microbiology class was also a director at the state health department in charge of inspecting restaurants. The first thing she told us on day one was never, ever eat at an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Men of Reddit, what are some green flags on a first date? She listens sincerely and talks sincerely. When you find a common talking point and she genuinely adds to not only the conversation, but your view on said topic. Good conversation gets me going. My wife, who I've been with for 8 years, and I had an incredibly awkward first date for the first hour. There was physical attraction, but we were both awkward and shy. Conversation was so stale and forced that I texted a friend that it wasn't going well and I could meet in an hour. Until, for whatever reason, she asked me if I had a zombie apocalypse plan. And I did. So we nerded out together over that and other topics flowed in more naturally. We talked for 4 hours and walked from South Keys to Rideau Center in Ottawa, walking the entire 4 hours. One good shared topic can start something amazing. I have to 100% agree. A good conversation can make you a 10 in my book real quick. Looking back, the thing that should have been the biggest green flag about the woman I married was that she made just as much effort to see me as I did her. She texted me first, suggested hangout times, and came up with date ideas just as often as I did. I don't think I realized it back then, but I realize it now. When we were first dating, my wife was in law school and an hour-and-a-half drive from her house. One night a week, she would come to my house. She was temporarily living with her parents while she went to school as a single parent. We'd have a date night, she'd stay over, and she would get up at 4:30 a.m. and drive back. That was 10 years ago, and she still always makes me feel appreciated at that kind of level. I try to up my game and respond back at that same level, and I tell her that my goal in life is that she never realizes that I'm the one that got the better end of the deal when we got married. I love this, and I will say it is something that I definitely look out for when hanging out with people that I'm interested in. If I'm the one that's always making the plans or texting first, I will eventually become a ghost because I don't feel wanted. You don't realize that hours have passed while you're sitting and chatting. You sit in your car at the end of a night and talk for another hour, and realize even after one date you genuinely miss their company. Oh hell yes, this is one green flag. In fact, that's one of the things I love about my now wife. Every long drive, about 6 to 10 hours, we would have something to chat about, and as a result we would get so into our conversation that we missed our exits at least twice. At one point, we were heading to SoCal for a family event, and despite knowing the way by heart, we still managed to miss our junction exit because of our conversation. It was about K-pop and K-drama in case you were curious. Listening and reciprocating questions. I don't want to talk about myself the whole time. This isn't a job interview where I'm the employer. Ask questions about me too. Also, good manners go a long way. We accidentally showed up at the wrong restaurant. Well, I showed up at the north end of town and she showed up at the south end. She ended up coming to meet me halfway, and after dinner we talked at a park at a lake until 2 in the morning, and it felt like no time had passed. She wasn't on her phone at all. I told her that I don't kiss on the first date, just to make sure that it's not about a hookup. At the end of the night, as I was dropping her off at her car, she gave me a nervous smile and then kissed me. Then she gave me a hug and even texted me to see if I got home, as she ended up making it to her place before I got to mine. Anyways, we've been married 8 years now. I'm sorry, but I almost fell in love with your wife. That's so beautiful. Dude, girls making the first move is pretty hot, but the "did you get home safe?" that text is always wholesome. You feel comfortable talking. So simply put, yet often unattainable. She has a level of confidence, nothing crazy, but you can tell that she has an idea of what she wants. When she puts her phone away, hell of a green flag. After posting this, I saw a couple of comments come through about safety. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Do whatever you need to do to feel safe for sure. I could have been a bit clearer in the original comment and said phone is silent and she leaves it on the table, or something like that. I wanted to get across that I'd prefer her to talk with me and not people on her phone. Ain't that the truth? I understand checking messages, but when you're on it for more than 5 minutes or so, at least excuse yourself and make a phone call if it's an emergency, or if you're not enjoying the date, just say so. It's sad that being present on a date is a green flag. Yeah, it is pretty sad. I feel you always see those comments about men having such a low bar to make women happy, but people don't realize it's the same for men. We are simple creatures. When she brings the 1977 to 2011 flag of Libya to the first date, big green flag. My daughter went on a date with this guy she met on a dating app. We were worried sick, making sure she texted us her location every time she went somewhere else. She got very sick on the date and he took her to the ER, waiting for her for almost 6 hours. When she went back, he wasn't allowed to go with her. So instead, he went and got her Waffle House since she had missed dinner. She still wasn't out after 6 hours, so he sat in his car with the heat on during the Georgia summer so that her food would stay hot. When she finally got out, he drove her home with her food because he wanted to make sure that she got some rest since she was sick. They made plans to go on another date when she was feeling better. They got married 3 months ago. We love him and I officiated the ceremony. Damn, give that guy a medal for sitting in a car with his heater on during the summer. She compliments you on how you look. Such a simple thing and it goes super far. Conversation flows easily and naturally. You're able to talk about big things like religion, politics, and children without feeling like it's a potential argument. You're both laughing and relaxed the entire time and you leave the date itching for the next one. I'm with someone really special right now, and I'm such a quirky, eccentric person, and the fact that I can just be myself around her has me feeling like it's safe to fall in love. Pray for me, bros. This one is really special, and I've never felt like this before. I really hope I don't screw this up. She showed up. Dude, this is my biggest fear after a rough breakup. I finally dug myself out of a funk and matched with this girl who lived 4 hours away. This is why I believe in destiny, because my settings were not that far and neither were hers. We agreed to meet at a town 2 hours away from both of us. So I drove the 2 hours to meet her. I sat in that park for about 15 minutes absolutely terrified she wouldn't show up. Things went great. We dated for a couple of months until her psycho ex went bat crap crazy and lured her back in by what I think was poisoning his kids that she used to take care of, and when she showed up, he messed her up pretty bad until she took him back. Yeah, that took a turn and I never heard from her after that when she went to meet him and he started texting me from her phone. Do I know if it's all true? Not really. But no one would move to another state to be with someone just to turn around and move back 2 weeks later. In conclusion, people suck. That story took a turn that I wasn't expecting because, well, the guy mentioned destiny at the start, so I figured they were going to be living happily ever after. Guess not. If you pay for a meal or anything, and she says thank you and is genuinely appreciative, a shocking, and I mean shocking, amount of women won't even say thank you when you pay for stuff on a date. Bonus points if she offers to split the check, or I don't know, if you bought the movie tickets and she gets the popcorn. Example, my now wife offered to split the bill on our first date. I declined and paid. She thanked me, then when we got a drink at the bar after, she said, "Let me get this round." That's when I knew she was a keeper. I will say an odd green flag is when you offer to pay and she doesn't get mad. I once went out with a girl who legit got upset that I offered to pay because she was an independent woman and didn't need me. It was hella odd. Lots of laughter and smiles. You don't want the date to end. She asks you questions about your life instead of what you have and how much you earn, and she genuinely seems interested. She's honest even if it's to share the less desirable side of herself or nature. She asks questions about yourself. This is a big one. Worst thing in the world is to date a narcissist. I bought opera tickets once for me and a lady because we were both into that. It's very late when we were done, so I offer, and she accepts, a lunch date so we can talk about it. The date went fine, and then she paid for it. I was a bit surprised. I'm of the belief that unless arrangements are made beforehand, payment is done by those who offered the date. She said, "You paid for the opera tickets, and I had a great time then, and now I'm not about to get greedy." They listen and are actually interested in things you have to say. They talk too, obviously, and don't expect you to entertain them, but rather has a nice conversation back and forth. No obviously expectations on food, drinks, or pay for whatever you're doing. For me, it's a big green flag when you're adamant on separate checks for the first date, because it means that they are serious and not just out for a free meal, no matter how the date goes. Honesty about your intentions is also a really big green flag for me too. Knowing if someone is possibly in for something serious with you only, or dating around to find themselves. And potentially, eventually, a nice partner helps in setting expectations on both parts. And you might find yourself great friends instead, even if things don't click. For more quick green flags for what I find myself falling for in a date, like I did with my wife, I'd say instant attraction. It's important for both parts in an intimate relationship. Can't have a long-term romantic relationship without attraction, unless you're asexual, of course. Another is having fun together. My wife is also my best friend. I still love hanging out with her after 8 years together. Intellectually compatibility. Equally smart, or in our case, equally stupid. We understand each other well, both in language and references. We argue and discuss things from similar points of understanding even when we disagree. To us, it's a cornerstone of our relationship because even when we get into fights, we can take a step back and reason to the point of understanding. We might still not agree, but at least we understand why. Similar core beliefs. Things like religion, how we look at people, how we consider kids, war, death, religion, and the meaning of life, money, career, family, etc. The big questions that shape how we go through life. They kinda need to be aligned for a long and healthy relationship. And if you find out early that they don't, you can save yourself a lot of heartache. Many people might disagree on this one, but I believe if you want a lasting relationship without one or both of you constantly having to censor/alter their views to avoid arguing, you need to have a similar core to begin with. I was sick with something, a lot of pollen where I'm from. We'd barely been talking a week on a dating website and I had mentioned my sore throat and runny nose. She asked me for my address. Being a dude, I thought nothing of it and I figured it was for a date coming up. I didn't have a car, so I figured she was trying to figure out how to pick me up since she didn't have one either. 2 hours later, I get a knock on the front door. A bag of assorted cough drops, tissues, cough medicine, just everything you could think of, hot chocolate included. We had our first date the next day and boy was I sappy. I had the opposite of this happen before. Had just started dating this girl and one day she randomly came to my house in the morning. Was let in by my grandmother and I was like, what the freak are you doing here? It was so random and she definitely became a toxic ex. So maybe randomly showing up can be a red flag instead of a green one. If the person can win against me in Mario Kart. You see, girls always say they could beat me in Mario Kart as a flirt, but then they don't realize I'm deadly with the green shell and I will crush them. It can't be helped. My first date with the person I ended up marrying went like this. We met online, got to know each other a little, then agreed to meet after a while at a bar that they were familiar with. We sat, talked, had a few drinks, had some bar food, and got along like we knew each other for years. After the bar closed, we sat in their car. It was winter time. For another couple of hours and just BS'd with each other. I knew then I might have found someone special. My wife and I aren't drinkers. Our first date consisted of walking around a park for hours, talking easily about who we were. We left and I definitely wanted something romantic with her. She wanted to go for another hike with me. It took until the third date when she thought of me in the same romantic terms. The emphasis is conversation. Hookups at the very most can only take up about 30 minutes. Find someone you can talk to in life. It'll get better. My wife was 30 to 40 minutes late on our first date. It was the first time that we had ever met. She was very apologetic and once she settled down from feeling bad about being late, she asked me questions no other gal ever had. Nothing crazy, but just questions genuinely interested in me. She has been the sweetest angel every day since too, and she also gave me 2 amazing daughters. Hard to explain, but her green flags were, and are, everywhere. Aside from punctuality. Text me when you get home. Love that. If they're polite to customer service people, it's usually a good sign that they'll be nice to you. Looks like pictures, helps carry the conversation, actually shares information about yourself. Don't stick with the generic answers for whatever reason. Doesn't interact with their phone, although I get it if I just came back from the bathroom. And be on time. Not on their phone, not talking about X, seems engaged in the conversation. Well, I've been on quite a few first and second dates in the last 3 years. Some were a ton of fun. Some really sucked. The ones that ended up going anywhere had most of these in common. On time, conversation flows easily, she asks questions and contributes. If we're having fun, going on a second location is a good sign. At the end of the date, if she leans in for a kiss or even asks you back to her place. She's gotta be polite to the staff, and if you pay for the date, being thanked is nice. Also being straightforward about her date goals from the start. If she genuinely cares about how you're doing in life, if she makes effort to understand you as a person, and if she chooses to split the bill at the end of the date. Being a girl going through these comments. Really? These just feel like common decency. Dating must suck for guys. Speaking as a guy, one positive is we do fear SA a lot less than women have to. But on the downside, we are socially expected to carry the conversation, pick up the check, bear the burden of making the first move, and take a backseat to whatever is on the girl's phone at any given second. I'm an old widower, but for me, green flags were open honesty, vaguely similar thoughts on politics and religion, absolutely no facade stuff, and taking turns asking questions about each other and paying attention to each other's answers. We talked for a while and really hit it off and eventually planned to meet up at her place to hook up. When I got there, we ended up sitting on her couch and just talked and talked and talked. This was our first time meeting in person, and our planned hookup had nearly turned into 4 hours of wonderful conversation. Been together 5 years, married her back in September. Easily the best non-hookup I've ever had. Met a woman for the first date at a local mom and pop restaurant serving Polish food. We both got the variety plate. I can't eat beef and she can't eat pork. We had discussed this before meeting, so I gave her my beef and she gave me her pork. Now that's already pretty freaking cute, right? At one point, we were both talking and laughing, and I started having an asthma attack. It takes me a minute to find my inhaler, take a puff, and I start to come back from it. And just as my breath is coming back to normal, she says, "So I took your breath away, huh?" I laughed so hard I needed to hit the inhaler again. Gotta love a person with a quick wit. Wasn't a first date, but a hookup at a party. I was chatting to her and her friends when she asked me if she could kiss me. It was so odd, but she did it in a super cute way. I agreed, but I told her that I think it should be in private. She asked me what room was mine, as the party was at a hotel at the time. We ran up and met in the room. When in the room, I started joking about how random this was, and my quirky personality kinda slipped out. She just mirrored my energy. Every quirk, joke, stupid slip-up, and action just worked with her. It was like we always knew each other. 9 p.m. quickly turned into 5 a.m. I knew this was something special, and I could tell she felt the same way. We moved in together within 3 months and have been side by side for the last 16 years. The green flags was it just worked. My girlfriend farted, no shame. Simply said excuse me and we both laughed. I swear we sounded like the damn horn section when we're together. She's the best. She was just really genuine and honest, and was just as nervous as I was when we met. She also had brought me a small gift that she knew I would love. She was honest about her intentions and expectations in dating. But what really topped it off was how quickly we were able to laugh and be silly together. An ultimate green flag is that the conversation just flows naturally on both sides. I remember the first date. Though we did not call it a date to avoid being labeled, it was rather a meetup with my significant other that I met on Tinder. We met up at a public coffee place, and the talk was just endless covering of a lot of topics. When we realized it was already getting dark, we still wanted to continue talking, and it was already a 3-hour conversation. By the time we both got back to our homes, it was 11 p.m., and I could not believe what had just happened. I'm horrible at reading people. Many years ago, I learned this little trick. You invite someone to do something in the future, but you leave out obvious details. If they ask you for those details, they're probably actually interested. Example, a group of us are going bowling next Thursday after work. Would you like to come? If she says yes, but doesn't ask what time exactly or which bowling alley, she isn't coming. I see what the poster is trying to imply here, but some people just expect you to let them know. Like me personally, if someone's like, yo, we're going bowling next Thursday, you wanna come? Then I would be like, cool, just let me know. Which means when you figure out the time and place, just let me know. Does your dog or cat like them? Animals see things we don't. I got the dog in the divorce. Years later, I went on a date with someone who ended up coming back to my place, and we stayed up talking until 3 or 4 a.m. I was sleeping in a hammock at the time and didn't own a bed, and also wasn't looking for a hookup, so my date slept on the couch. When I came out to the living room in the morning, my dog was sleeping on this guy's legs. Doggo had never come to bed, just stayed in the living room with my date. We celebrated 5 years this past January. We lost the dog a few years in, but my cat sleeps near my partner almost every single night. Open body language. This shows if they're actually interested in you and genuinely like you. If their body is pointing towards you and their arms aren't crossed, but also pointing in your direction, it shows that she's comfortable with being around you and probably likes you. If they cross their arms and their body isn't pointing towards you, or if you are sitting beside them on a bench and she puts her legs up on whatever side you are sitting on, this means she doesn't feel comfortable with you yet and probably doesn't like you. talking about big things like politics, religion, kids, marriage. When I got out of my last relationship, I screened dates. I'm old enough to know what I want, and I wasn't going to waste my time dating someone who didn't match up. Also asking about STD testings. Shows me he is responsible and selective about who he sleeps with. I get one done every 6 months anyways, so I'm happy to compare results with him. We're married now, and our first anniversary is next week. To be honest, asking somebody about STD screenings I think is a positive green flag. I think if you're willing to do that for a possible relationship, I think it shows a lot about your character. That's it for this video. What is the dumbest thing you got punished for in school? Flip the monitor screen upside down, Control plus Alt plus arrow key. Got banned from using any school computer for the rest of the year. I did this by mistake once, and I told my friend about it. After I left, he decided to flip the screen and leave it that way. I got in trouble for leaving the computer in an inoperable state. They had to re-image the whole thing. I feel like I did this once when I was younger and had a meltdown because I didn't know how to get it back. Technology is hard. 6th grade, a classmate got to school without her backpack and I was the only one to notice. School started and she was looking for her bag and I told her that I saw her arrive without it. After which she started yelling at me for no reason, telling everyone that I had hid her bag. I exploded with laughter because it was funny that she was blaming me. Teachers came and sent me to the principal's office. Nobody believed me, and I guess giggling didn't help. I was in detention until this kid's mom called the school and let her stupid daughter know that she forgot her backpack at home. I'm 33 now, and not so long ago I saw this girl again. I went to say hello and to remind her of that day, which I still find funny. She didn't react at all to that. Yeah, you're still a jerk, Susan. Freaking Susan. In middle school, one of my friends brought Hello Kitty band-aids to school, and our entire friend group decided to wear them as accessories on our hands and arms because they were cute. Our English teacher wrote us up and demanded that we not wear bandages for the rest of the year because he saw them as gang symbols. A Hello Kitty band-aid gang. I still don't understand his thought process.
Sanrio gang rise up?
Holding my pencil the wrong way. Teachers hated it. They tried those little rubber things and nothing worked. I just liked my way. I have nice handwriting, by the way. Well, this really irked my 5th grade math teacher. So she started to dock 5 points on every test or quiz I held my pencil wrong. When my father asked what this was about, I told him and he laughed and said, "Keep going." Wait a minute, you had a 5th grade math teacher? You're telling me in the 5th grade you didn't have one teacher that taught you everything? My elementary teacher once freaked out because I was holding not 1, not 2, but 3 pencils at one time. Why the hell do they even care? 4th grade, this crazy girl who was always talking to herself told me about her elaborate plan to kill the teacher. I told the teacher and got in trouble for gossiping. This OP probably got put on the crazy girl's hit list after being a snitch. Talking during lunch. The policy was a silent lunch, also with silent classroom hours, meaning the children weren't allowed to talk, which essentially gave everyone half an hour of recess to get out all that built up energy. Understandably, my 5-year-old self was not down with that. We were in the process of being dismissed anyways. It technically counted as recess time. I have a somewhat common sounding name. However, I only ever really encountered 2 people with my name. One of them was in middle school. He was black. I'm white. One time I got called to the principal's office for something that had happened on the bus on the way to school. I wasn't a bus rider. All the other students involved were black. One look at me and the principal knew it wasn't me, so I was dismissed. The next year, I decided to cut class with a couple of friends. We just took off running across the field, which was behind the cafeteria at the end of lunch. As we ran, one of the administrators saw us, and another friend of ours was close by. Pretty sure he got grilled and ratted us out. My 2 other friends got suspended, but I never heard a peep. I suspect the opposite thing happened. The black kid with my name got called in, and they obviously knew he wasn't involved. Dude, this could be a sitcom. You guys could live together and get into wacky antics and social misunderstandings. Instead of Everybody Loves Raymond, we can call it Everybody Loves Racism. Being left-handed on the first day of 1st grade. The teacher took away my pencil and made me use my right hand. When my mother picked me up, I told her what happened. She talked to the principal, who apologized, and then called in the teacher to make her apologize. The rest of the school year was very tense. Another event that occurred to me. I got a day of internal suspension in high school for having an overdue library book. I had returned it on time, but the librarian put it on the wrong cart and it was shelved without being scanned back in. I know this because a few days after I returned the book, I saw it on the shelf. I still had to pay the overdue book fine. Dude, I wasn't permitted to graduate college until I returned or paid for a book I only had for 24 hours. Plus late fees because the library lost it. I very much feel your pain. Refusing to dance in kindergarten. We were doing some activity that involved dancing. I didn't want to, and I convinced a friend of mine to join me in protest. So they sent me to the principal's office and called my mom. Damn the man. Dude, this OP was trying to unionize in kinder. Hugging a friend of mine. School had a no PDA rule and they cracked down on it hard. I had just seen my friend for the first time after winter break. I gave her a hug for like a second. I was also female. Teacher saw it and threw a fit and I would end up talking to the principal. Good thing the principal was a smart lady. She let me and my friend off with a warning and I never hugged anyone in school ever again. Did this school happen to be in Florida? Because it gives off Florida vibes. Started a huge conga line my senior year. One morning, I went to my locker and was talking to my friends. We decided to start a conga line for some stupid reason. I was in the front, so I led us down the hallway. I started to point at people and told them to join the party. I told them to invite anybody that they knew. I led us through the cafeteria, through the gym, and when I decided to walk to the principal's office, a teacher stopped us and said that the conga line was a fire hazard since it had gotten so long. I told them that that was dumb, and if there was a fire, we'd conga right out of the school. They gave me a good talking to for being a smart butt. Also, I was going to get paddled by the principal for fighting. He told me that he liked me, so he was only going to give me one paddling. I told him if he liked me, he should give me two. I got suspended for that one. I would be shocked if this OP wasn't the class clown because these posts were hilarious. In 5th grade, we were starting an assignment. The TA was going around passing out papers we needed. I was going through my pencil case, kind of mumbling a supply checklist to myself. Pencil, sharpener, eraser. She handed me the sheet and I say, paper. She looks at me all weirdly and walks away. Don't know what that was about, but I just start working. About a minute later, the teacher walks up to me and says I have to stay for detention at recess. What? Reason being, the TA thought I said payback, apparently as in, there will be payback for giving me this paper, I guess? It was completely stupid. I explained myself and they just weren't having it. We argued until lunch, and I was getting increasingly pissed off to the point where I was on the verge of tears. Eventually, everyone left and the teacher said, okay, I believe you. I don't think that you'd be this upset if you weren't telling the truth. Just apologize and you can go out with the rest of the class. That pissed me off even more, and I asked what I was supposed to apologize for. Just say that you're sorry that we misunderstood you, then you can go play. I took the detention. Hell yeah, I love taking a stand. My elementary days are becoming a bit more foggy as I get older, but I definitely remember being a kid that talked back when a teacher didn't make sense. Definitely got sent to the principal a couple of times too. Cracking my back. The teacher wrote me up for doing gymnastics in class and sent me to the principal. He laughed and asked if I did a barrel roll. I had to have it signed by my parents as well, who also laughed. It was funny for everybody, but at the end of the day, I was still stuck on a Saturday morning doing stupid work. I'm still bitter about it. Reading during class. They were teaching us how to open a Word document. The detention was lunch detention. They assumed that me, a lonely little 6th grader, would be in agony by not eating in the lunchroom, but instead a quiet room. I just happily ate my lunch and read my book more. A woman yelled at me in college about sleeping in her class. I was in an intro to computer class. I had taken every computer class in high school, including Cisco networking and 4 years of Microsoft Office. I explained this and she was still upset that I had finished all of her work for her day in 10 minutes. It was making a super simple PowerPoint, and I decided to nap because the class was at 8 in the freaking morning. Man, must be nice to have computer classes for 4 years of high school. I think we had just one computer class for the 4 years, and just so happened to use computers in other random classes. My senior year of high school, power went out and neither my mom's nor my alarm went off. This was 30 years ago, no cell phone alarms. Neither one of us woke up in time to get me to school on time. She brought me in late with a note saying that it wasn't my fault that I was late. They gave me detention for an unexcused tardy. I go off that it wasn't unexcused, that I had a note that said I wasn't the cause for being late. The office person said that the note wasn't a valid excuse. I say something along the lines of, So you're telling me that if I had lied and said that I had a doctor's appointment, I would be fine? She says yes. I tell her that that's BS and all they're doing is telling people to lie instead of tell the truth. She says something along the lines of, someday I'll learn that telling the truth is its own reward and that lying has its own consequences. To which I said, but those consequences aren't a detention. I was furious. I went to the phones at school, pay phones by the way, and called my mom at work. Told her the story, and an hour later I got called back to the office because apparently my mom had written the wrong thing on the note. I was at a doctor's appointment that morning, so I didn't have to serve a detention. In the 4th grade, I drew a picture of Link from Zelda and included a crappy portrayal of the Master Sword. Went to the principal's office, and they called my parents. Sounds like you drew Link's other Master Sword. It must have been 1st or 2nd grade. I was sitting with the kid on the bus to school that I got along with. We weren't great friends, but we would talk on the way to school. I have no clue what started this convo, but he started asking me if I thought a grenade would blow up the bus. Well, I guess so. What about an RPG? I guess. A tank definitely could. That wasn't verbatim, but you get the gist. It was some kid just idly daydreaming probably about Call of Duty or something. I do remember that to this day I was reading when that convo started. I replied with nothing other than, yeah, that makes sense, or I guess. We both were suspended from riding the bus for a week. Oh boy, here we go. I was playing Mario Kart DS with my friends on the bus in either 4th or 5th grade. Suddenly, like 4 bombs just fell on me at once. And I turned around and told my friend sitting in the back seat behind me what had happened after he asked what my exasperated "oh no" was for. I'm greeted at the school by a majority of the security guards and forcibly escorted to the principal's office for threatening to drop bombs on the school. I bet this kid hit the bus driver with the blue shell and this was his revenge. English class in the 10th grade. We had a test on a book that we were supposed to be reading. The entire test was short answer, and I had literally not read a single word of this book, meaning it would be next to impossible for me to guess any of the correct answers. When the teacher was passing out the exams, I politely said to her, "I'm sorry, but I didn't read at all, so you just have to keep that paper." She told me that she was very disappointed and asked me at least to write my name on the test so that she knew that I was present that day. I wrote my name at the top in pen. According to the syllabus in that class, using the pen on any of the assignments results in -2 points on the grade. I received a -2 on that test. I would have performed better by staying home that day. Man, that teacher was petty. Got yelled at in the 6th grade. I was bused to a bad neighborhood by the guard watching us on the playground for being on the sidewalk, not the blacktop. I said, "Okay, sorry," and I did a little wave. She detained me and drilled me. "What gang sign did you just throw at me?" I was this little 10-year-old white Mormon girl and didn't even know what a gang sign was. My name is spelled with an AH in the middle, which is usually for said name to be spelled for female variant. In year 7, a teacher went off on me when I was writing on the front of a book saying that that wasn't my name and she spelled it wrong on purpose. Cue a very long argument I lost, which resulted in me having to write lines of the spelling without the H in my lunch break, while the teacher berated me for lying about something I wasn't actually lying about. This reminds me of a sub we had that wouldn't believe my classmate's name was Gideon. That's an older name, sure, but it's perfectly normal and biblical even. The sub flipped the freak out, thought everyone was messing with her that was his name, and he got sent down to the principal. There was this kid in my class with obvious behavioral problems, but the school didn't do jack crap to help him. One day at recess, some other kids were playing keep away with his hat. He has a total meltdown and just starts attacking one of the kids, throwing punches, kicking, screaming. Trying to defuse the situation, I walk up behind him and I get him in a bear hug so he stops punching this kid in the face and just keeps saying, "Calm down." At that moment, I hear a teacher screaming my name. I turn and see her watching from a window. A minute later, she comes running outside yelling at me and drags me to the principal's office. My parents are called and I have to have a conference with the teacher, principal, my mom, the other kid, and his parents. Nothing I say matters because the teacher saw me beating this kid up from the window. I ended up with detention, had to apologize to this kid and his parents, and was suspended from the basketball team. I was in the 4th grade. Prior to being dropped off at school by my dad, I had discovered an old school Lego spear. You know, the little brown ones? And a rubber band. I had likewise discovered if you stretched the rubber band around the length of the spear and then pulled slightly on it, you could make a square shape with the spear propping up two of the corners. This is amazing, I thought to myself. I conveniently forgot that if you pull the sides of the rubber band too much, then the spear goes flying. So I brought my new square maker toy to show all my friends, and they were about as impressed as you are all reading this. We're waiting in line to go to one of the classes, and I'm showing my friends, and lo and behold, the spear flies out of the rubber band and hits my teacher in the glasses. She just stares at me, I stare at her, and she says, "Go to the principal's office." I find out later that she claims that I attempted to kill her. The principal just laughed while all three of us were in the office, and she told me that she had to call my dad and he had to come in. The principal relayed the story, and now my dad's laughing too. I think that teacher was onto something. Kids can be stone cold killers. Yelling no loudly. I was in the 4th or 5th grade. The teacher asked if we wanted to play a game no one liked. Everyone was like, no. And I guess I yelled. I didn't even realize I was louder than the other kids, and I was very confused when I got in trouble. I was sent to sit in a little cubicle near the classroom. The teacher forgot me, and they all went to lunch, and some other teacher found me there, crying alone in the dark. And then in high school, the teacher said no talking, and the kid next to me asked me a question. And before I could even tell him to shut up, I got detention. He didn't though. I had to copy an essay about how I would bring my letter grade up by paying attention in class. I had straight A's. Another time, in maybe the 7th grade, my friend kept throwing my Hobbit book across the lunchroom, and when I went to go get it, she would bump me off the edge of the bench onto the floor when I tried to sit down. So she goes to throw it again, and I grab her wrist to stop her, and she starts crying, and we both got detention, which I thought was really unfair considering she was bullying me and had literally knocked me to the ground. From my experience, bullies never got in trouble. I got yelled at for consulting an encyclopedia. No formal punishment, the teacher just knew she was wrong and I was about to look up the correct answer. I tell this story too damn much, but here I go. In the 4th grade, we were required to keep a journal. It was an English lesson thing. One time, I wrote about my passion at the time, which was insects, and about something that I had learned, which was insect camouflage. The teacher underlined every instance of camouflage and wrote that I spelled it incorrectly. She wrote it spelled CAMOFLAGUE. I was like, what the freak? No, it isn't. I knew this because I didn't know how to spell the damn word, and I had to use a dictionary. And when I looked it up, it was spelled the way I thought it was. I showed the teacher and she insisted the dictionary was wrong. So I got my friend's dictionary, and once again, it was spelled camouflage. CAMOUFLAGE. She insisted that his dictionary was also wrong and that she was correct. I was mad, so I brought a completely different, brand new freaking dictionary to school, where it was spelled the way I thought. She snapped and said if I didn't drop the issue, I would get detention. I dropped it, but I should have kept fighting for it. To her credit, I still remember how to correctly spell camouflage. Kissing my girlfriend. Someone in the house across the street saw, called the school, and I was suspended for a few days. This didn't happen at school, but I got caught by my neighbor feeling up my girlfriend when we were both in the 8th grade outside my house. I just heard this loud knocking from the neighbor's window and we both got super embarrassed. But hey, still touched some honkers. Some jerk of a kid thought it would be funny to attack me out of the blue. I ended up with a sprained wrist and some broken ribs and he was totally fine. I got a week of in-school suspension and he got away scot-free. It was in the 1960s. I was a straight A student. When asked my opinion about a book in class I was reading, I admitted that I thought it was boring. I got 10 lashes with a leather strap on each hand and a month of after-school detention. I had some kid prepared to hit me in the face with the football. I decided to grab his arm and take the football out of his hand. Another kid then took the ball and threw it at him. He went off and cried saying that I hit him and threw the football at him. Everyone in class took the stance of no snitching, and I got suspended because no one would verify my side of the story. So much for defending myself. This was the 6th grade. I got into an argument with the kid who bullied me a lot. So I told him, at least my parents like each other. His parents were divorced. Jerk move, I know. But this kid was also a huge jerk. Anyways, he gets pissed and leaves. I think, finally, he'll leave me alone. He returns with a big rock and bashes me in the head with it. I'm knocked out and have to get carried back to the nurse's office by another kid, leaving a trail of blood. It required a few stitches. So I get suspended for 3 days and 1 day of in-school suspension for bullying. The other kid went home for half the day. I have had a few situations in my public school life, but that made me lose complete faith in the administration. My buddy tackled me out of the blue and we both got in trouble for roughhousing. Understandable, but when we both told the powers that be that I had nothing to do with it and that he had tackled me out of nowhere for no reason, I remained in trouble because I hadn't dodged the attack. No joke. How did your crazy ex become your crazy ex? After I broke up with her, she used makeup to make fake bruising on her arms, neck, and face. She then proceeded to send pictures of all of this to our mutual friends as a warning about me. I suspected that she was crazy long before I knew her, but I realized that she was a freaking psychopath when she asked me to euthanize my dog because he was taking up too much of our time. Holy crap, that's a nightmare! Yeah, I had to pull to the side of the road to finish that conversation, because I started shaking uncontrollably after those words sank in. Dude, that is what we call a stage 5 clinger. Put an ad in the paper, became a lady of the night, brought clients to our family home, we had kids. If finding out your partner was cheating was an Olympic sport, this guy might be taking home the gold. I can't decide if this is hilarious or horrifying. Sims characters should never date their neighbors. Ever had a girlfriend threaten to harm herself because your Sims character is dating the computer-generated neighbor? I did. She woke me up because I had the night sweats and she was convinced I had AIDS. For some reason, I decided to appease her and I got a full STD screening test, including an expensive AIDS test. A few weeks later, I drove to her house and gave her my signed note, which I specifically had to request from my doctor stating my clean bill of health. She accused me of foraging the entire thing and in the following argument pulled out her plates out of her cupboard and started frisbeeing them at me. I left immediately. About 6 months later, I had just started dating my now fiance. She contacted me to tell me that she believed me and wanted to know if she and her 2 dogs could move in with me. I never responded. Dude, just waking up and demanding you get an AIDS test should have been the I'm getting the freak out of here moment. I knew that, I know that. I was young and she seemed cool prior to that. She also got extremely religious during the course of all of that and quit her well-paying job without notice. Honestly, I think her mental health was on a serious decline. I can speak as someone who has dated a fair share of toxic women. When you are dumb, young, and full of well, you often don't think clearly and red flags turn gray. He painted my name all over his bedroom, bathroom, and lounge room, proposed and then photoshopped us into wedding pictures, sent invites to all of his family, mine and my friends, got an ultrasound photo online and tried to announce to Facebook that we were expecting a baby, shaved our initials into his cat and left hundreds of love letters taped to my car. So that was crazy. We went on half a double date with friends. I was just being a good sport. Noped out when he proposed when the food came out. The rest came over the next week. To clarify, in case that was confusing, this was all after our one and only date. This wasn't a we dated for months and then his crazy came out. This was we met an hour ago, why are you proposing to me? She tried to draw my blood out while I was sleeping to put it in a vial she wore around her neck. Dude, I heard about people that do this, and I just have to ask why. Like, what is the purpose? Would start arguments out of thin air because I'm drama, and this is who I am. Then one day, I went drinking in her hometown. She ran into her ex, and a day later, she said sorry, but I'm going to start dating him again. 2 days after that, she was begging to get back together. Nope. Messaged me occasionally for a few years to go out for a drink, but eventually she stopped when she got knocked up. Good luck to the guy who knocked her up. In addition to being an absolute gem of a personality, she had awful genetics and family. Getting that quote at the start just made me think of Breaking Bad. I'm drama, and I'm the one who starts it. He tried to strangle me with an HDMI cord because I didn't straighten my hair that day. He had been crazy for a while, but this was the very moment when I realized it. He walked miles in the snow to get to my house, tapped on my bedroom window for an hour until I acknowledged him. I turned him away. In the morning, I heard him rustling in my closet upon waking up. The little freak snuck into my house somehow and was hiding in my closet. I threatened to call the cops, so he left. Weeks later, he emailed me pictures of me sleeping from that night. I still have nightmares about finding him in my closet. This is by far one of the worst stories I've ever read here. I truly hope you are okay and have some form of legal separation from this psycho. He called me endlessly for 2 years. He's disappeared now, but it took a while. Are we gonna question what she means by disappeared? Like, did he just go away or did she make him go away? Was supposed to be medicated and never told me. Didn't matter since she stopped taking her meds before we dated. She tried to make up for it by taking many different recreational substances that she failed to mention as well. Found her substance kit and I noped out. Her mother said, and I quote, "I'm surprised you made it as long as you did." I dated a girl that was bipolar and I can confirm that things can drastically change if they suddenly stop taking their meds. Killed the dog that my dead spouse gave me. What a jerk. Please tell me you went on an epic killing rampage like John Wick. My husband's ex, his girlfriend from high school, was crazy because she set up an appointment for a portrait session to have pictures done for our 3 children for her house. No, we didn't let that fruitcake take our children. They broke up their senior year of high school. And this was when we were in our 30s. We were shocked by the contact from her, never mind the appointment. We also found out she had her phone number listed, this was the time of phone books, as Mrs. Our surname this whole time, which was never her real name. She was stuck in her high school fantasy, which was frightening. This is the kind of story that has me Googling my ex's first names in combination with my last name, just in case. I could see one in particular pulling crap like this. This is definitely the start of a horror or suspense movie. Beat the crap out of me, then out of his next GF and their kids. He lied about his police record and previous conviction from beating me. He is charming and manipulative, so I get why she believed him. He got out of prison recently for what he did, and I'm just glad I'm across the country now. He started messaging all the new guys he thought I would maybe go out with, asking them not to invite me out because he felt like he still had a chance with me. This happened not once or twice. This happened with around 10 guys. He didn't even know them in person. I didn't even know them. I told her after 3 years of dating that I was actually a war refugee from Chechnya. She just knew that I was from Russia, nothing more. And that I had seen a lot of horrible things during my childhood. I saw people get executed, bombs exploding, people dying slowly of gangrene, dodging snipers, etc. Never really told anybody this in my life since I came to America. I told her because I was pretty sure I wanted to spend my future with her. I told her it was a massive deal that I told her this in the first place, because I've never told anybody. She left me right afterwards because she assumed I was crazy or mentally damaged from all the crap that I went through. She said that she didn't want to date some scary war refugee. The worst part was her parents, who I mostly communicated through because she refused to talk to me. They believed it too. They said horrible things about me, saying I was a criminal, a junkie, that I would end up beating her up, and that I'm just another street Arab. I am Missouri, not Arab. They basically put their foot down and said I could never date someone like their daughter. It was one of the worst weeks of my life. Really made me lose faith in long-term relationships. For all those curious, it wasn't an immediate thing. She always found me sketchy in a way because I was from the bad part of Brooklyn, and she knew I had a history with some hard substances in my teen years, even after coming to America. She was scared of all that stuff. She wouldn't go to certain bars or clubs that had a certain type of person. She preferred yuppie bars. She came from a white upper-class suburbs, so right there it was a major divide in how we grew up. Apparently that divide made her really uncomfortable. Like she couldn't relate to me, and finding out that I was a war refugee was the last straw for her. She tried to drown herself in a river in the middle of December because she thought I wanted to sleep with someone else. I had to wait out and get her. This was after she spiked my phone on the ground when I received a text message from a friend saying my then girlfriend had left her purse at the bar. On a separate occasion, she grabbed her car keys from me after getting wasted, and when I tried to stop her from driving, she almost ran me over. Yeah, she was nuts. Sounds like this girl I dated once when I was younger. Way before Uber and Lyft was a thing. She had been drinking and I told her that I would drive her home. She was extremely adamant that she would be fine to drive. Well, I told her that I was going to at least follow her home to make sure, and she just said fine. Well, the moment she got into her car, it became a Fast and the Furious movie. She was driving like she just robbed a bank and I was the cops. She tried to lose me on the highway and I ended up catching up to her at some gas station, and she freaked out and sped off again. I stopped following her after she called me and told me that if her dad finds out she's dating someone, he would send someone to kill me. I wasn't taking any chances, so I backed off. As you might assume, she turned out to be extremely toxic. Murdered my pet cat and left her corpse in my sock drawer. Was pregnant with another guy's baby. I found out when she lost it during a substance overdose. That was when I learned that she was pregnant and also did substances. Genetics. Both of her parents were bat crap crazy, so I shouldn't be surprised when she started stalking me after she cheated on me and I dumped her. She threatened a few of my, and by extension our, female friends with physical violence just for being around me, and tried to get me fired from my job. She called my manager and told him that I was on substances. Nothing further from the truth, and had two of her other friends come into my store and be extremely angry customers saying I felt them up or something. Fortunately, my boss knew about everything that was going on and didn't buy any of it. I noticed my undergarments were going missing. I mentioned it while doing the laundry. He accused me of cheating, saying that I left my things at some other dude's house, and that totally meant that I was cheating, and he began hurting me for the missing things. I was pregnant with his child at the time. I kicked him out. I was scared crapless on how I was going to support myself while I was about to give birth and miss 6 weeks of work. I began packing his things to keep my frightened mind busy. Found a big box hidden in the basement full of my undergarments, huge inflatable toys for where the sun don't shine, and trans adult content. My thigh highs were tied in knots with junk hair sticking out of them. I put in a video labeled with my name. It's him dressed in my clothes, doing stuff to himself while pretending to be me. Turns out he was a secret crossdresser with a violent history and multiple substance charges. Lied about everything, from his education to his orientation. I don't trust human beings anymore. Oh, I had one mega crazy ex. This girl was 5 kinds of freaked in the head and needed to be locked up. First, she had a kid. I didn't doubt that. I saw her stretch marks. Not a big deal. She claimed the kid had been kidnapped by a baby daddy and disappeared. Okay, strange things have happened. Things started not adding up soon. She was a pathological liar. Started with, I make $60 an hour in the military, which I knew was BS for her rank, since my mom was a higher rank than she was and made far less than that. She stole my car one night, and by the time the cops got there, she had already got back and claimed innocence, and the cops threatened to arrest me for making a false report. She then tried playing the ultimate psycho card. She said she got a call saying that the kid and her dad had been found in a wreck in Canada, and that the kid was dead. At first, I wasn't sure to call BS on that or not. 2 days later, she downed a bottle of sleeping pills with a full bottle of vodka. While she was in the hospital, I did some digging and found out that she and her husband got a divorce. He was awarded full custody due to her being a complete nutbag. I noped the freak out of there as fast as I could. Crazy story, but I do want to point out that you can 100% get stretch marks without having a kid. I'm a dude and I have some. Sometimes you just grow too fast for your body to keep up. When he got himself locked in 4-point restraints in the ER because he was convinced he had AIDS and started trying to infect the staff. Or when he proudly told me that he was the son of Jesus Christ. Or when he tried to kick in my door at 3 a.m. as a grand romantic gesture. Or also when he thought his bald spot would grow hair again if he was just a better person. That Jesus Christ comment reminds me of that kid on TikTok that believes he's the reincarnation of Hitler, because he has a birthmark where Hitler apparently got shot. Cat disappeared. Strange, was a friendly cat. Upstairs neighbor with big dogs came down screaming that my ex somehow convinced both dogs to jump out of the window to their deaths. She attacked me with scissors and a knife on different days. Serviced some guy in his car outside of our apartment. Finally, turned on her hairdryer and threw it into the shower with me. It takes a lot to piss me off apparently. Man, I wasn't expecting this post to get as much attention as it did, so let me elaborate a little bit. 2 disclaimers, I was young and stupid, and she was sexy as freak. This doesn't excuse my not bugging out much sooner, but it's just to give you some insight in my frame of mind. What I mentioned was pretty much in chronological order. Regarding the cat, not really that unusual. He was an indoor-outdoor cat, so any number of things could have happened to him. A neighbor may have thought that he was a stray and taken him in. He may have been hit by a car while he was out on a prowl. I have no idea. It's more of a, in retrospect, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that crazy bee killed him type of thing. The dogs, now that's much stranger. My ex hated those dogs. They were big and noisy, and ran around the upstairs apartment playing all day long. As such, she started a bit of a war with the upstairs neighbor, who was herself pretty nuts. I stayed the hell out of it. My ex had said several times that she was going to kill those freaking dogs, but I passed it off as just being annoyed with the constant noise. Hell, I didn't like it either. But otherwise, the apartment was great, so we weren't really too excited to find a new place. The incident, whatever it was, happened while I was at work. I came home to the crazy neighbor screaming at my ex about how my ex somehow coaxed her dogs into jumping from the window. Now, my ex was pretty petite, and these were big dogs, so there was no way she could have broken into the neighbor's apartment and physically thrown these dogs out the window. I've owned a few dogs in my life, and no matter how stupid they are, they were never so dumb as to fling themselves out of a window. Now, I had no idea what the hell actually happened, and to this day, all of this was probably 20 years ago, I still can't explain it at all. But at this point, I did start looking at my ex from the corner of my eye, just wondering. On to attacking me with scissors and later with a knife. Well, these incidents proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that she was dangerous, but both happened in the heat of a moment, during arguments. As I mentioned earlier, she was quite petite, and I was much faster than her, so I had little trouble disarming her without being really in harm's way. I mean, it wasn't like she was going to try and kill me in my sleep in cold blood, right? Yeah. I forgot to mention there was another attack. She tried to mace me in our apartment. Inside, with the windows closed. I just backed up and raised one eyebrow. Like, what the hell are you even doing? The mace just settled in a big cloud in the middle of the room, missing me entirely. This really made her mad, so she charged at me for another go with her mace can, straight into the cloud that she created. She dropped like a rock, and I just rolled my eyes. Okay, come on, let's get you to the bathroom and wash this out. The makeup fun time after was great though. But at this point, the relationship was pretty much over. It was just a matter of actually, officially ending it, which neither of us really seemed to want to do. All of these things, of course, happened over a few years. And of course, in the times between these instances, it was actually all normal boyfriend-girlfriend type stuff. Shopping, vacations, laughter, dinners, and talking about the future. Of course, there was arguments and fights, some her fault, some mine, but most of the time we were both to blame. It wasn't like it was 2 or 3 years of nothing but crazy 100% of the time. Relationships aren't that simple. Anyways, near the end, we both had sort of stopped caring. That's when I caught her hooking up with some guy outside of our apartment. That was the, well, this is 100% done moment. It was failing before, but I had hopes that we could still work through it or something. Like I said, I was young and stupid, and she was hot. But nah, this was done. So I set my mind and attention to finding a new place. I didn't even want to bother fighting over the apartment. It wasn't that nice. I just wanted out. Oddly, we were getting along fine now. We both had accepted it, or so I thought. One day I come home before her and I hop in the shower. The past several days had actually been great. Laughs, hooking up, cooking, like a normal couple. She comes home while I'm still in the shower, walks into the bathroom, turns on her hairdryer, and without a word and without emotion, she just throws it into the shower with me and just dead-eye stared. I pulled a freaking Matrix slow motion action jump, arms out, water droplets slowly falling in some sort of hyper reality, as if, well, someone had just thrown a hairdryer in your shower. Probably yelled, "What the freak?" Then I got dressed and walked the hell out. Came to get my things later with an army of friends. This story was wild. Oh, and by the way, as a warning sign for all the men out there, if your girl ever tries to stab you, get the hell out. I had a friend that almost died when his girl stabbed him while he slept. No girl is hot enough to die for. He cheated and I was stupid and forgave him. 2 months later, I was served with an eviction notice because he lied to my face about having paid rent. I told him that I would give him a chance to work on himself, but I needed space and I would find somewhere apart from him 2 months later when the lease was up. He threatened to end himself 3 times, called me wasted multiple times, switched between, "You're the best ever and I love you and I can't live without you," and "You're a lady of the night and you're the worst person ever, die alone." From voicemail to voicemail. By then, I had told him that we were definitely over, but the final nail in the coffin for him was when he drove to my new house wasted to call me names and tried to pull me out of my house. When I told him to leave or I was calling the police, and I just went into my house. He was psychotic and emotionally crazy, and will always be psychotic and emotionally crazy. The crazy bee literally made me choose between her and my mother and sister. She couldn't handle other women in my life. It went beyond not liking me being around them. She would go to crazy far lengths to get me away from any female in the vicinity. She never did that until a month or two before we broke up. Glad I did. He literally stopped talking to me after I told him I was SA'd. No breakup, just silence. He never spoke to me again. Art teachers of Reddit, what's the most disturbing artwork a student has ever submitted? My literary arts teacher told us a story about the only kid that's ever been kicked out of the program. He only wrote stories about women being killed and assaulted by snakes. No matter what the writing prompt was, he turned it into snake essay. He then read them out loud to class, proudly. He didn't last too long. Back in the 90s, I volunteered at an art studio that provided free classes for low-income inner-city at-risk youth. Wonderful nonprofit run by a couple of cool old hippie ladies who did an amazing job helping the kids feel free to express themselves artistically, no matter what they wanted to create. For example, one teenage smart butt made an elaborate paper mache of Bob Marley smoking a huge herb stick, and they hung it up proudly in a place of honor. No judgment or preachiness at this art class. So one year, they decided to have the younger kids do a Day of the Dead themed picture, with a short paragraph to commemorate a loved one. The teachers were expecting pictures of grandmas and maybe pets, and there were some of those. There were also several scenes of murder, including childishly drawn guns, knives, and oh, so much red, followed by short descriptions like, "My brother was shot, he's dead now, it was loud and scary, I miss him." These were like 7 to 9-year-olds. Those pictures were displayed just as proudly as the grandma pictures. That sounds like a wonderful program. It really was. They did so much good. And now I'm going to get up on my soapbox about public funding for art for children. Kids growing up in bad situations need role models, job training, education. They also need, like food and oxygen, a place to express themselves, including the anger and pain that they carry that no one wants to listen to because it makes us all feel uncomfortable. In those art classes, I saw angry 9-year-olds who acted like antisocial, jaded 15-year-olds. They were actually relaxed for a change and enjoyed themselves creating something beautiful or ugly or weird, but something they had control over. The look of defiance, then gratitude when a kid would make a picture of a dinosaur stomping on a car wreck and the art teacher would say, "Wow, great use of color and detail," instead of more disapproval, was priceless. The heart and soul of our world is so much more than the bottom dollar line, y'all. I have to say, I absolutely love that these programs let the kids create whatever was on their mind. My earliest memory of writing was when I was in the 4th grade. My teacher had us do a group project where we had to make up a story involving everyone in the group. Well, one big thing that was happening around this time was the series Resident Evil was getting really popular, and I decided to write a story where we were all trapped in the zombie apocalypse like Resident Evil. This story literally had kids getting killed in it because, well, that's what happens in the game. I remember after presenting it to class, everyone wanted to be in the next story because they thought it was so cool. Looking back, I'm glad my art teacher didn't force me to write something different because it might have killed my spirit and robbed me of that moment of people praising my work. High school 1977. While everyone else is drawing Pink Floyd rainbows and peace signs all over everything, the biggest burnout in class makes this wide metal bracelet with intricate triangle designs cut out of it. He turns it in and gets a great grade for the first project he ever bothered finishing, and some well-deserved praise for his effort. Teacher hands the work back, and the first thing he does is grab a pair of pliers and bends all the triangles outward, making a thick metal spiked bracelet. I found that devilishly, disturbingly clever. Told the kids to draw something that would make them happy. One kid scribbled black all over the page and said nothing makes him happy. That student was referred to the school counselor. I was in primary school. The teacher told us to get out our jotters and come up with some ideas for a poem that focused on one particular emotion. I scribbled out and tore up 3 pages. It took hours for me to cheer up. However, there was a good side. There were a pair of jerks in my class who couldn't do anything to save their lives. They always came up to the teacher and asked for help with the age-old, "I can't do it." This time, my teacher pointed at me with my head buried in my arms on my desk and said, "That's what 'I can't do it' looks like. Just because you're in tears doesn't mean you can't be smug." God damn, that art teacher kicked that kid while they were down? That's rough. When I was a camp counselor, I let one of my campers draw while he was waiting for his parents to pick him up. He left his drawing behind and my supervisor picked it up, went over to me and was like, "What the freak is this?" He drew a bunch of dead bodies at the bottom of a staircase, covered in blood, body parts left behind on the stairs, lots of red crayon was used. I didn't find out till later that one of his favorite things to do was play a computer game called Stairfall with his older brother. You know, the flash game where you throw stick figures down a set of stairs to see how badly they can get hurt. I never played that game, but I want to play it now. When I was in kinder, I drew a male ghost going to the bathroom. I had older brothers, so it was very detailed. And I even put a water line in the testes, because that's where I thought they stored the urine. The teachers and principal called in my parents for a serious conference, and asked my dad what he was going to do about the picture. After my dad finished laughing, he told them that he was going to make copies and send it to all of his friends and relatives for Halloween. And he did. And I still have a few extra copies. Oh, and I found out that the balls do not, in fact, store urine. Not me, but I played a huge part. Brother's art class in the 2nd grade was doing those full body tracings on big sheets of butcher paper. They were supposed to trace each other and then draw themselves. My brother evidently refused to draw a face for himself, would not budge on that. Drew everything else, but no face. Wouldn't say why, and because he was super shy and quiet, clammed up more when the teacher started grilling him about it. The art teacher calls the principal because this is concerning. Principal calls school counselor. Counselor meets with my brother, who still won't talk about why he won't draw his face, asking him questions like, "Do you not like yourself? Do you feel bad about yourself?" etc. At this point, he's really clammed up and is now refusing to talk because he's really shy to begin with, and all this questioning is happening. School calls my parents. They have a meeting about the fact that they think my brother is depressed or has some kind of mental issue. Parents freak out, of course, and my brother still won't talk. My parents and counselors start asking if he feels neglected or unloved or some crap. Mom's crying, dad is frustrated, and my brother thinks he's in trouble for something, and I guess in an effort to stop them all acting crazy, he says he doesn't draw his face because he hates someone in the family. Cue full family counseling for like a month. My mom is a wreck, thinks my brother feels like he's neglected, and doesn't love him, so she's constantly like, "You know I love you very much, right?" Counseling isn't going well because my brother is just quiet and confused. Me, 2 years older than him, is just mad that we always have to be at this office. Finally, during one session, my brother finally cracks. The doctor asks, "Who is the person in your family that you hate?" My brother says, Puss, our cat. She bites me." My dad and mom are stunned. The doctor is surprised, but pushes his advances now that my brother is finally talking. "Why didn't you want to draw your face? Do you feel bad about yourself?" My brother says, "I just wanted OP to do it. She's a better drawer than me." No psychosis, no early childhood trauma, no mental disorder, just an overly concerned art teacher and a little kid who thought it would be best if his older sister drew his face because she's a better drawer than me. It makes me really uncomfortable when teachers push children who are shy like that. I remember seeing stuff like that in art class where students didn't want to talk and teachers would just make huge deals about it, making the situation even worse for kids. There's a way to bring them out, but making a huge scene in front of the class is the worst thing you could do. Bro, all I have to say is after all of that drama, that is an instant chokeslam and powerbomb onto a mattress when we get home, followed by a Shawn Michaels elbow drop. Not a teacher, but in 2nd grade I was infatuated with the battleship Bismarck. I also loved the flag on it, with the red background and white circle with that cool box thingy. We had to build a design to look like a quilt using construction paper. I did mine using the Nazi flag. It looked 100% like it. My teacher didn't say a word, but it was shown to my parents and they burned it. It took me 5 years until I figured out why they did that. Not an art teacher, but in my AP art class in 12th grade, a fellow student in class decided to make an art portfolio with the human fetus as its theme. One piece in particular was a hyper-realistic ink drawing of a tossed salad with little fetuses in lieu of shrimp. If my memory serves me right, they also did a piece that was a martini with the fetus in lieu of the olive on the toothpick. I had a second grader draw a picture of me and him together, and my hand was behind him. He wrote, "Coach Kubert likes to touch me." I don't believe I ever touched him, not really the type of person. However, it was pretty embarrassing. Not a teacher, but my daughter came home from kindergarten with this. When I asked what it was, she said, "Cookie Monster with his head blown up, and then he peed his pants because his head's blowing up." It's still hanging in her room because she's so proud of it. I didn't realize it at the time, but apparently we have a few copies of this theme. Either my kid is really a psycho, or she remembered that we thought the original was funny and did it again. Her early work was a little too abstract for my taste, but when Cookie Monster with his head blown up and then he peed his pants because his head was blowing up came out in '83, I think she really came into her own, commercially and artistically. The whole piece has a clear, crisp look, and a new sheen of consumer and professionalism that really gives the composition a big boost. She's been compared to early Basquiat, but I think the OP's daughter has a far more bitter, cynical sense of humor. You remember that Superbad movie scene with the beepies? My friend did that about 15 years before that movie came out, and someone turned it into the teacher. He got suspended for a few days, and his parents had to come in and review the notebook with the principal. I mean, it was filled front to back with beepies. I had this kid, I'll call him Joe. He had special needs and loved movies. He hated everyone but me. I was his first male teacher ever. He would often draw me pictures of Godzilla and King Kong. It was awesome. When he went to the next grade, he drew a picture of his new teacher being eaten by sharks. She freaked out, called a whole bunch of meetings, and went nuts. She was saying that she was scared that he wants her dead and she fears for her life. I was asked to have a talk with the kid. I asked him what the picture was, and he said that it was the lady from Jaws 4 being eaten by Jaws. We then proceeded to talk about how Jaws 1 and 2 are awesome. I will always sing the praises of a good teacher. My first and second grade teachers absolutely sucked. They were old ladies and they thought I was a troublemaker and often sent me to the office because I wasn't doing my work. It wasn't until the third grade and I had this amazing black teacher who noticed I was struggling and told my parents that I might have dyslexia. Sure enough, I did, and I started getting special help. Even though I hated it at the time, I really appreciate that my third grade teacher didn't just pass me off as the bad kid and really look deeper into what was wrong with me. A friend of mine had to have a meeting with his parents and teachers about his drawing in primary school. They were completely harmless drawings of zoos, houses, trees, etc. But when you viewed them upside down, they showed disturbing images. Obviously, he had no idea what they were going on about and said it wasn't intentional. He's now working in a good job and is completely normal. This kid drew a giant turd on the chalkboard. There was pieces of corn in it too. He said he didn't like Chipotle anymore. A yellow smiley with a sad mouth, with big black words written on it. "I want to eat a lot of medicine to end myself. My parents hate me." This kid was 10 years old. Not an art teacher, but there was this kid in my art class who would always draw super dark things. Not so much scary, but more depressing. I figured he might have a crappy home life, and I noticed he didn't really have friends. So I thought I could talk to him and just be friendly. He seemed really nice, just a little weird. Flash forward about 3 months, and wow, I'm glad I was nice to that guy. He got called down to the principal's office during class, and no one knew why. We finally found out that he had written a hit list and had been suspended for a month. Seems a little lax, but whatever. He comes back to class and no one wants to go near him. At the end of class, however, he comes right up to me and says, "Don't worry, you weren't on the list." You had me convinced that you were talking about me right up until had written a hit list. I was the proud artist behind some strange works in community college. A girl in class thought I went through a rough breakup or something and just made nice small talk with me throughout the day. We talked a lot about the music we liked and local restaurants we recommended. I really enjoyed class because I got to spend time with her. It was nice. Well, someone else supposedly interpreted my art differently and told campus police that I was going to shoot up the college Columbine style. Got pulled from the class to talk to police and a social worker. It didn't go well because I got a year's probation for terroristic threats. I still went to class and all, but it was never the same. I always thought that that girl I talked to could have just been playing me. I find it crazy that people can just be punished from made up crap. Like, this isn't those people that cry about cancel culture ruining people's lives. This is legit someone made up something and it had an effect on another person's life. I truly think we need harsher punishments for people who make false claims. I had a male college drawing one student who liked to draw pictures of beautiful women screaming. I can see how this could easily be goth or trying too hard to be edgy. It wasn't any of those things. He just really liked pictures of women in distress and seemed obsessed by the idea of it. I jokingly told him to use his powers for good and not for evil, and that it's better to get your emotions out in drawing than in the real world. Not an art teacher, but I'm a volunteer at a center that does art therapy. One of the happiest little clients we ever had handed me a drawing of their deceased mother with their face twisted into a horrified scream. Eyes blackened and brown goop was pouring from the mouth and eyes. Sometimes I stay up at night thinking about it. Oh, and I thought I should verify something. This person's age was mid-20s to 30s. I volunteer at a center for adults with disabilities. I don't know the full details of this client other than they function at a lower mental capacity. My little brother got in trouble for drawing a picture of a polar bear eating a seal. Lots of red crayon was used. He was like 9. I didn't get why it was such a big deal. It's not like it doesn't happen. When I was a kid, I drew a dinosaur eating another one, with an open rib cage and everything. My teacher wanted to send me to a therapist. I just wanted to draw realistic looking scenes. I got in trouble with the teacher who couldn't stand me. We were using the computers and this age-old image just happened to be on some website I was on as an ad for something. One of those crappy ads that is on the side of the screen when you're scrolling down. She called a meeting with the principal and called my mom in. Thankfully, my mom called her out on her BS and pretty much told her to quit being a petty idiot and wasting everyone's time. I almost cried, I was so happy. When I was in high school, a really weird guy would ignore the instructions for any assignment and just draw pictures of people being murdered, cut up, buried alive, all kinds of crazy crap. The teachers never did anything. One day after school, he pulled a knife and stabbed my friend in the hand for being a Jew. Suspended for 2 weeks. He told someone that he was going to shoot up the school like Columbine. Luckily, the person he told went to the police. When they came to the kid's house, they found a rifle and a drawing of the school. He was planning on setting fire in the chemistry lab, and then when people came out of the other side of the building, he was going to start shooting from the bleachers in the football field with a rifle. I don't know what happened after he got arrested, but hopefully he's never freaking getting out of prison. That guy was seriously dangerous. Also, our teachers and school administration were clearly freaking brain dead. How did he not get thrown in jail or juvie for stabbing somebody? Plus, it was a hate crime. Most likely, the school didn't want police involved as it would look bad on them. And the parents pulled some strings not to get him expelled, so he was just suspended. It happens more than it should. I do want to add that this is a horrible and mostly illegal behavior from the school, and it definitely does not happen everywhere, and I want to believe that most schools are against any kind of behavior like that in their administration. But this happens in good schools, where the school's reputation, which helps them attract donors, is so important to them, that even the smallest violent case being reported makes the administration go all defense mode, and try to brush it under the rug in fear of any kind of violence being connected to their name. The fear of their job and money gets the better of them. Obligatory not the art teacher, but in high school we had a kid whose art portfolio was displayed at the school's art show. Numerous drawings, sketches, paintings, etc. of tadpoles. From a single one to dozens to hundreds. A full 2-year art class is dedicated to tadpoles. Until he informed everyone he was drawing sperm. Not the teacher, I was the kid. Little background, grew up in a small beach town and was somewhat known for my artwork and being pretty good artist for a little kid. In the 8th grade, we had to design a deck of playing cards. I was 13 and was going through a really hard time and made a series of super dark cards, like the Fallen King and the Dead Joker, Queen of Human Hearts, Hanged King, etc. I really enjoyed working on them and loved how they turned out. Very dark, but also colorful, like Dolly meets Tim Burton. Anyways, I went to a small private school and our cards were going to be displayed for the art show. Mine weren't allowed in the show and weren't allowed to be displayed for them being too dark, and my teacher said I needed therapy. Which, surprise, I was already in and was told to express my negative feelings through my art, which I did and then got in trouble for and denied a place in the art show. I still have my cards, I still think they are pretty dope. Still bitter about it not being in the art show though. I accidentally made a realistic hoo-ha in my pottery class. This happened to me during one of my ceramic classes in college. The professor was teaching us how to use pottery wheels to make bowls. If you can imagine the act of making a bowl out of clay, the clay is pulled up taller and wider as the pottery wheel spins. I'm doing my thing, making a real nice bowl. Then at a certain point, it all collapsed inwards from two opposite sides. The clay folded in on itself as it fell, and the weight caused the original bowl shape to elongate. I was left with what looked like a perfectly detailed clay hoo-ha. So naturally, I left it as it was and fired it, and glazed it. Now years later, I sneak it into friends' houses and put it on their bookshelves. When they find it, they shake their heads, laugh, and do the same thing to someone else in the friend cycle. I call it the brotherhood of the traveling hoo-ha. Men have read it who proposed and she said no. What happened afterwards with your life? My mother told my father no 3 times. On the 3rd time, he got wasted at the local bar and basically started pouring his heart out to anyone who would listen. Mind you, it's a very small village in the Italian Alps, and my father barely spoke Italian, and no one in the village spoke English, including my mother. Word got back to my mother about this sad American at the bar, so she went to find him and she told him that she'd marry him. My parents celebrated their 44th anniversary last month. Bro, it's women like this that give hope to the annoying, desperate male characters that want girlfriends in most anime. She was an art major and I had just joined the army. We had been lovers since high school. I asked and she said no. She wanted to get her master's. We were friends for a while, but we don't talk anymore. She works as a bartender now, I think. I ended up getting married to my best friend. We've been married for more than a decade and we have a 5-year-old son. Oh, I have a story about this. My friend had been with his girlfriend for years, so he decided he wanted to propose. What he didn't know is that she was also thinking about proposing to him. He proposed first and she freaked out because she had already set up her proposal and bought a ring, so she said no. Over the next week, she freaked out more and more and refused to answer his calls or messages. My friend then decided to use the money he had saved up to buy a plane ticket to Europe. What was supposed to be a 3-month trip through Western Europe turned out to be a year-long trip around the world. One day he says that he's coming back and she decides to go and wait for him at the airport and propose there. It turns out that while being in Peru, he met a girl and they fell in love almost immediately, and he got married in Peru. Cue 5 years later, he and his Peruvian wife are still very happily married and recently had a baby, while his ex still hasn't quite forgiven herself for ruining her relationship with him. At first, I thought this was going to be the typical one proposed and the other takes out their ring and makes it a double proposal, but this definitely had a turn that I wasn't expecting. I mean, how dumb can you be to let someone you wanted to marry leave the country for 3 months and let it turn into a year? Pretty idiotic if you ask me. My mom actually said no to my dad's proposal when they were younger, not because they weren't in love, but because she wasn't sure if it was something she actually wanted to do, rather than something that society expected of her or whatever. They still stayed together and had kids, hence why you're reading this now. And when my dad was terminally ill a few years ago, my mom plucked up the courage and asked him. Just to get back at her after all of those years, he said no, before taking up her offer a few days later. He died a happy man. For a bit more of context on this, it was actually 2 declined proposals, not just 1, both pre-children too, so let's say I'm lucky. Also, when they did get married, it wasn't purely an action for the estate or whatever, they already had their wills sorted out. It was just one of those last great days as a family type things. In fact, my sister and I were the only 2 present at the registry office. And when I say office, they literally squeezed us into one of the registry offices as there was a big waiting list for weddings, and we didn't know how long he had. He died 3 months later, so we were all hugely grateful for them helping us out with this. As a woman who got engaged and the proposal was later revoked, it still stings a little 11 years later. When you are so sure you're with the love of your life, losing them can really pop a hole into your life plans. We met in her home country of Germany while I was traveling. I knew I was in love. We dated long distance for a while. Me flying to Europe, her flying to the US. I suggested marriage so we could be together. She said no a few times. I didn't press, but I was patient and not being pushy. I knew she was worth the wait. Then it hit her that's how we could be together. If we got married, we could live in a country together. That was a difficulty of being born on different patches of dirt. A few years later, I'm still married to my best friend and living with her in Germany. Not all no's stay no. Life goes on. We lived together for another 6 years until she changed her mind and told me that I should ask again. We were engaged for over a year and got married in 1991. We are still married and have 3 children, and we are both still very much in love. I find it crazy that relationships still continue after a proposal rejection. Because on one hand, it feels like the rejection is saying, I don't want to spend the rest of my life with you. But I guess on the other hand, the person might just be against the idea of marriage. Which is fair, because you don't want to marry someone who is against the idea of marriage. I mean, look at Will Smith and his entanglement. My dad proposed to a woman who said no. My dad was a violent alcoholic, and she said she couldn't be with him unless he got clean. Took him a little while, but he did just that. He wound up meeting my mom through a matchmaker, and they've been married for 25 years. If that woman never said no to him, he would have never gotten clean. It was the lowest point in his life, but it all brought him to my mom, who makes him happier than ever. She had cancer. I said we should get married because I had full medical coverage from my work. She said no. And over time, we grew apart. I haven't talked to her in 15 years. I don't know if she died. I knew a couple who did just that. He proposed in order to give her citizenship and health insurance, so she could remain here and get cancer treatment she desperately needed. They stayed married for about 15 years and he even adopted her son, but they never lived together or were romantically involved. Years later, they divorced when he met the woman of his dreams and wanted to get married. They were all very close friends, with no drama. She lived and is a university professor now. He's in another state with the woman of his dreams. Phoebe Buffay, is that you? So this actor, Patrick Moot, proposed to his girlfriend at a basketball game and gets turned down while on a giant jumbotron. Clip goes viral on YouTube, Facebook, etc. She tells him later that she turned him down because she thinks his pee-pee is too small. So he travels around the world documenting what other cultures think about pee-pee size, pee-pee enlargement, and made a movie about it called Unhung Hero. I've never watched it, but the title alone makes me laugh. I've never heard of this film before, but I do agree. I think it's a great title and I'm interested in watching it now. This is the story of my parents. My dad asked my mom to marry him several times. She said no several times. One day my dad asked my mom to marry him yet again, and she said yes. He freaked out and left her apartment and dumped her. 3 weeks later, he hated his life without her and begged her to take him back and marry him. They were married 9 months later for 16 years until my mom passed from cancer. They loved each other so much and they had such a deep appreciation for each other. That was 25 years ago. My dad has not remarried. No one will ever come close to my mama. Dated a woman for over 2 years and popped the question. First time she said, I don't know. A couple of months later I asked again. She said, maybe. I was pretty bent out of shape. But then I found out that she was sleeping with several of my friends, so I dodged a bullet there really. Damn dude, I'm sorry about your friends, genuine crap bags of people, to knowingly sleep with your girl. I hope you find better friends. Dude, that would literally break me. Like, cheating is crappy if it's a coworker or someone you don't trust. It's 1,000 times better than going to vent to your friend about your girl cheating and he's like, yeah, I'm the other guy. It happened to a friend of mine, and honestly, I think it did break him. His girlfriend slept with his oldest friend. This was a couple of years ago. I remained friends with the guy for a while afterwards, and his personality within the relationship just seemed to, for a lack of a better word, crumpled. She continued to sleep with other guys and manipulated him into blaming himself for the unfaithfulness. I think most people would agree that cheaters belong in the trash, set on fire, and then thrown off a cliff. FYI, that was just a figure of speech, don't take it literally. We received a letter from the immigration office saying that she was lacking some documents. At the moment, we were stressed, both of us with work and study, and none of us were sufficiently fluent enough in German to decipher this kind of language. We went to the university office for foreign students. The lady in charge translated the letter badly, telling us that even with presenting the documents, they would proceed with the deportation process. We panicked, looking for some more help. We ended up at City Hall. With the adrenaline rush, I proposed to her in quite a loud voice, "If we got married, could we stop the deportation?" is what I said to the poor guy in the information office. I can't remember if he gave us an answer. I want to marry her. Will you marry me? She started laughing. I started laughing. The guy in the office gave us the telephone to the pertinent department and asked us to call. We went out of the city hall and we couldn't stop laughing. She said to me, well, thank you, but let's wait a bit. After the weekend, we went to the immigration office and the people there explained which documents were missing and how to get them. She wasn't denied the visa and we kept living in the same way as we planned. It was intense and, in retrospect, pretty funny. My mom and dad were not married but wanted a kid and had me. My dad, being a Catholic and Hispanic, decided he wanted to be married to my mom and proposed. She said no because she hadn't been divorced from her first husband for very long and now had 3 kids and preferred to stay unmarried. He threatened to leave her and got on his motorcycle and started to drive away until my mom chased him down and gave in, leading to what my parents call the voodoo wedding the same day. I'm gonna need more details about this voodoo wedding if you have them. From my understanding, the way it went down was they immediately flipped through a phone book looking for someone who could marry them for free the same day. They eventually came across a small mom and pop store / restaurant in a bad part of town called The Cut that agreed to do it in a back room using their waitstaff as the witnesses. It was a quick 5-minute ceremony that ended with the officiant making them eat a meal with them. To their dismay, they were charged for all of it and had to run home and break open the quarter jar. Okay, look. I get men can be very dramatic at times and act this way when getting rejected, but my guys, we really need to sit back and reevaluate how we handle rejection. Getting someone to marry you out of pure pity is not the strat. I was a young Marine and I was only home during the weekends. I was dating this girl for about a year from my hometown. When I asked, she said yes. Her dad, who was former Navy, kept saying that we should wait. We put it off for a bit longer. Fast forward another year, she dumped me. Father informs me that she had been sleeping with a lot of guys, like more than 50 over the last 2 years that we dated, and was very happy I didn't marry her, and he apologized for her bad behavior. She then totally ghosted everyone in her family for about 6 months. Find out she moved 7 hours away and was living under a house, and I don't mean in a basement. Literally under a house with a new BF. She calls her mom to come get her. The mother and father asked me if I could go get her and bring her home. Good times, good times. That would have been a big hell nah from me, my guys. I asked her right out of high school and she said she wasn't ready. We stayed together, went to college at the same school, spent the first year in separate dorms, then moved in together, got married a few years later. Our 20th is coming up. In 2017, Google came up with this idea to allow you to make photo books out of your Google Photos account. My girlfriend and I had been dating for almost 2 years, and I knew that she was the one that I wanted to marry. So I created this wonderful photo book of all the selfies of us together, and ended it with a page made out of photos I generated that say, "Will you marry me?" I then proceeded to put all of these into an album and build the photo book. What didn't occur to me at the time was that the album I put these in was a shared album, and other people get notifications when you add new photos to it. And the other person that this album was shared with? My girlfriend. That evening, we had dinner and it all came out. She saw the photo and she wasn't ready. There were a few reasons why, and they were good reasons and smart reasons, mostly to do with timing, family, and finances. We weren't breaking up, we just weren't getting engaged at that time. A year later, we had successfully discussed the concept of getting married. We went ring shopping, she picked out her own ring, and by the time I actually did propose, we both knew what the answer would be. We celebrated our first wedding anniversary in April. It seems to have worked out so far, and the photo book is on my shelf to my left as we speak. I'm a firm believer that the only surprise in a proposal should be how you're proposing, not that you are. She or he should know that it's going to happen at some point, but not how. Marriage is a big deal and should be discussed extensively beforehand as it is a huge legal agreement. I'm glad it ended up working out for you. The photo book idea was really sweet. My mom told my dad no when he proposed to her, even though they were already living together. She thought he was impotent, and it wasn't until she got pregnant that she said yes. In retrospect, I wish my parents would have decided earlier in their relationship that they could barely stand each other. That's a big oof for the OP, but money and kids have to be the 2 biggest reasons people don't get together, right? I spoke to her about it beforehand, and she seemed really keen on the idea, so I decided to propose about a week after in front of all of her friends. She was so shocked she picked me up off my knee and shooed me away. Most of her friends were confused because everyone knew what was going to happen, and she said that she was excited for it. I didn't know what to do. It was all really embarrassing, and later on she explained that she didn't mean no, she just didn't know what to say and was scared. She said yes after apologizing profusely, and just this year we celebrated our 9th anniversary. Not my story, but someone I'm friends with. They both had crappy homes and became a couple at 14. Somewhere around 20, he proposed to her. She said that she wasn't ready to commit yet. After that, he proposed every year partially in hopes that she would be ready, but it was also kind of a ritual where he would just show her that he's still serious. She would say no every time. In their late 20s, he was done with his studies. She could see the finish line, so she told him that she's ready, meaning marriage and eventually children. That's when he got second thoughts about marrying the only woman he had ever had a relationship with, and he wasn't sure if he was making a mistake. They went on a break. She went to the US from Europe to do her PhD at MIT. They eventually drifted apart more. She moved on and found a new long-term relationship with a partner that's a lot better for her, while he quickly regretted ending the relationship and started hooking up with whoever he could find on Tinder without being able to form a meaningful relationship after. That's what a lot of people would call fumbling the bag. My mom rejected my dad the first 2 times. There was no real hard feelings between them. I guess my mother just wasn't ready for marriage yet. She ended up proposing to him. My grandmother and my mother sewed a suit for their dog to wear and attached a sign around his neck with a ring that read, "Will you marry me?" Then she sent the dog into the kitchen to beg for scraps while my father was preparing dinner. The next thing she heard was a very concerned voice shouting, "Honey, the dog is asking to marry me!" Cue absolute hysterics. My dad said yes to the proposal. My human dad and my human mom are still married 2 years later. We'd been dating for a year and a half, and I was due to move out on orders. Was in the army. She suggested we get married. I said, no way. I'm going off to school, army type, for 6 months and then a year on deployment to the Middle East. It just wouldn't work. She was calm and then said, "You think I'll be a burden to all of that, but I'll actually be a help." Well, just seconds earlier, all I could think of was what a pain in the butt it would be to get married and leave, and now, for whatever reason, it seemed perfectly reasonable that she was right. We got married a week later at the courthouse. I was 22. Last month, we had a really nice social distance dinner party for our 29th anniversary with our 2 amazing kids and a few friends. For non-military people listening to this, could you marry someone in the military? Personally, I don't think I could, but that's probably because I've come across too many people that have been in the military that are unfaithful. She said yes, as I had a special occasion planned, one of those observation wheels, and I proposed at the very top, and we were on our way to a family event, and I had the ring made and everything. Then a few days later, she said no. Everything fell apart. I was distraught. We continued dating for a while, but it was long distance, other side of the world. When I visited, it would be super awkward. Eventually, her dad kicked me out. I was flying standby and was stuck in an airport for 4 days. Took me years to recover. Now I am happily married and I'm glad it never worked out. I wasn't in a good place when I had met her and her family was super controlling. It would have never worked. The woman I married is super cool and is my best friend. Turned out better than I expected. We were dating for a little over a year, but I was so sure she was the one. I drove 2 hours to see her at college and went on a beautiful winter night walk and proposed. She looked me right in the eyes and said, "Oh, you thought this was serious? Well, I don't know how to say this other than that I've been seeing other people. Well, actually, I have been seeing other women." I was stunned. I got up, put the ring in my pocket, and walked to my car. Got in and drove away, never looking back and crying the whole time. Haven't seen or spoken with her in 7 years, even though she's tried countless times to reach out. Now it's a story I tell my friends who are nervous about asking their significant others to marry them, reminding them that even if they say no, it could be worse. Well, about 2 years later, I met my wife of 22 years. We are happily married. The one that said no got married for the first time last year and seems happy. My wife is way into me in ways that the former girlfriend was never, and I see that my life is far more happier with my wife than the one that said no. She's not a bad person. I was just young and in love with someone that wasn't in love with me. It worked out for the best. I'm glad she said no. Not sure if this counts, but I did propose. She said yes, but 1 month before the wedding, she took it back. This is what happened immediately with my life. I personally lost $3,000 worth of deposits. My parents and her parents lost about $4,000 each on deposits. Me and my parents are working class, so it took us years for us to financially recover from this. I spent about $2,200 on the ring I didn't want. That was my biggest regret, and I will say that to anyone who listens. The engagement ring chain I bought it from wouldn't take it back. I took it to pawn shops and they'd only offer a few hundred. This engagement ring store banked on customers who wanted the whole ring. Stone, band, setting. If you're going to buy a ring, just buy the stone. For the gold band setting, you can get that at a local jewelry store. Apparently my gem that I bought was crap. Most of the cost of the ring was BS. Most of my family was from out of state, and a lot of them were pissed because they had to cancel their flights. I had to go to the ER because I didn't leave my room. I couldn't take any calls because everyone was so pissed and I didn't want to hear it. I was depressed and just stayed in bed. One day, my roommates grabbed me and took me to the ER where the doctor treated me for severe dehydration and an infection. What happened when I got over it? I became stronger for it. I didn't propose to anyone until a decade later. Honestly, there wasn't anyone that I loved deeply enough to be committed in a relationship. But when I proposed, I was in my 30s. Our relationship was more mature than the first time I proposed. We've now been married for 13 years. She's my best friend. When I have good news, she's the first person I want to tell. And when I have bad news, she's the first person I want to tell. I also financially recovered as well. I learned my lesson about the engagement ring. Only paid $300 for it. She loved it and treasures it. After our 10-year milestone, we were doing so well, I took her to pick out a new wedding ring at any cost. She refused, and she still wears the cheap $300 ring and loves it. Redditors, what is your "did I freaking stutter" moment? Vehicle inspector here. Sir, your back taillight is broken. You need to get that fixed and come back. I'm friends with the owner here, and you're telling me that my car has problems? I already have, and if you aren't prepared in the future, don't waste my time. My friend has a shop and does vehicle inspections too. At least once a month he hears, but some other shop gave me a sticker. And his response is always, how nice for you. Take it to their shop then. When I finally kicked my ex out of my life, she tried to argue us back into being together. As I drove her to the airport, and even had the balls to critique my arguing techniques as inconducive to resolving a fight. I cut her off and said, what part of this are you not getting? We're way past that. This is not a fight that I need to work through with you. I'm taking you to the airport and I never want to see or hear from you again. Dude, I feel your pain. Went through almost the exact same crap with my last ex. My ex openly admitted to getting me mad on purpose because she found enjoyment in it. Screw all crazy exes. Found out my supposed best friend, who I was letting live on my couch, was sleeping with my girlfriend who was also living with me. I work in IT, so I work crazy long hours, but we had a massive power outage one day and my boss said to go home for the day. So I left 5 hours early. Caught them both red-handed. Kicked them both out at once, which was ideal because I got 2 birds with 1 stone. They both apologized profusely and asked me, even though they made a mistake, why would I kick them out on the streets in an area where they can't afford to live? Silicon Valley. I laughed my butt off and said, I guess that's something you two should have figured out during pillow talk, huh? And I slammed the door as hard as I could right in their faces. Needless to say, it wrecked me for a while because I loved that girl. But looking back on it, I think it's the only moment in my life where I proudly have stood up for my morals and values and not taken any crap or continued letting people walk all over me. And that crap is priceless. God damn, dude. Props to you for being such a savage and an overall Chad. Hope everything worked out. My mom came to my new place, and out of reflex, she called me a lady of the night like she did when I was living with her as a teenager. I told her to get out. There was this amazing moment when she was completely disoriented by my reaction. It didn't compute, so I had to tell her again. It's time for you to go, please leave. It was one of the most important moments in my life. I'm amazed you were nice enough to let her show up in the first place for treating you that badly. Good on you for immediately sending her out. Thanks, she was there because I want to stay on good terms with my dad. He is the reason I'm anywhere near her. Sending her out was very empowering and very sad. It was amazing to finally have the power to stand up to her, but really sad that this is what I have to put up with from my own mother. Ever since then, she has made an effort not to insult me in front of my face. So there's been some progress. Horrible situation. My mom was an alcoholic who was paying for all of her boyfriend's nursing home expenses and then paid all of his family's expenses like car payments, big purchases like appliances, or home remodel payments. My mom's addiction caused her health to plummet. She needs to be in nursing care. Her BF dies and his family never contacts her unless it's to complain about the money they need. I take over her finances and cut off all of those freaking sugar mama payments. If they had stayed in regular contact or regularly visited her, sure, I would have considered it. But no, they just wanted her to cover their payments. I cut off the entire family. My mother had a lot of money. One of the jerk's BF's sister calls to tell me that they're going to report me to Adult Protective Services. I say, go ahead. I have nothing to hide and you guys are the jerks. They were flabbergasted that I said, did I freaking stutter? They tried to report me, but all that happened was Adult Protective Services reached out to see if I needed any help transitioning my mom to the nursing care. They stopped talking to my mom after that. She died never hearing from them again. I was the one holding her hand during the last few days of her life. They didn't come to her funeral or to the memorial her students held for her after that. If I'm being honest, I think this OP was pretty soft on these people. Maybe this was their first time having to talk to horrible people, because I would have tombstoned these people to hell. When I quit my last job due to a promotion, I let my current boss know that I accepted the promotion and gave him 3 weeks notice, and that my last job was going to be March 31st. He proceeded to tell me that he would discuss a time when he would allow me to leave, and I wasn't allowed to leave until he said so. I very firmly repeated myself that March 31st would be my last day, and that was non-negotiable. He was the worst person I had ever worked with in my entire career. Slavery is illegal, yes? I called HR and they confirmed that he had no control to make me stay longer, and that I was free to move to my new position. On top of that, they said I was generous for giving 3 weeks notice instead of 2. They coached me on what I should do if the situation continued to persist, and offered backup to talk to him if it kept happening. He was talked to by HR. I was terrorized for the last 3 weeks I was there, as he tried to get me to quit so I couldn't move to that promotion. I contacted HR again and chose not to hand over the 6+ months of records I wrote down of his inappropriate behavior at the time, because I was leaving that position and it could affect my new promotion. I chose to only submit my documentation to support the person after me if they also had trouble, to support firing him. I also had to go to the doctor due to the stress and anxiety levels. I was given prescription medication for migraines so I could make it through the last 3 weeks. I didn't have a single migraine after I left that job. No promotion would have kept me from burning down a terrible boss. Sometimes people just need to be knocked down a peg. Had a door-to-door salesman ring the doorbell. I was nice, opened the door, and stepped outside onto the step. Dogs were going bananas. I let him tell me everything he was selling and then politely told him that I wasn't interested. Went to open the screen door to go back in and he puts his arm out to stop it from opening. I have a resting jerk face normally, so I guess the look on my face was enough, but I was instantly livid with him. Had a dude try this while selling bullcrap books and reached out towards my kid, pointing, not grabbing, and says that I should be concerned for his education. This was after my 3rd refusal. It then turned into me saying, "Get off my freaking porch," and picking up a stick. I was enraged. Dude was trying to convince me that I really needed this overly expensive dictionary CD-ROM thingy. I told him, after much talk, that I literally don't, because I have a few paper dictionaries and internet access. He then screamed, "Well, it's not like you know what's best for you anyways." And he started trying to convince my mom. I took my mom's hand and left. I was 17 at the time. I worked in a gas station and 2 guys walked in and kept looking where all the workers were. I kept an eye on them because they looked shady. Then I see one of the guys put a pack of sausages in his pocket and then come over to the till to buy a Red Bull. I made my coworker, who was my sister, move so I could serve them. And then I scanned the Red Bull and said in the most casual way I could, with my heart nearly ripping out of my chest, I'm not a confrontational person, "Do you want to pay for the sausages you put in your pocket too?" And the look on this guy's face was priceless. I had to repeat myself and he just mumbles, "I'm sorry," and paid for the sausages. After they left, my coworker lost it, said how taken aback she was because she thought I was being rude to the customer before she realized what was happening. She ended up telling the manager about it, and I got a good old pat on the back and a sincere thanks. Doesn't sound like much, but it felt freaking awesome. Dude, I will say when you confront thieves and win, it does feel awesome. I stopped a group of TV thieves when I worked at a big warehouse store. I saw through all their little plans and set up my team to catch them before getting what they want. I'll have to tell that story in more detail when I do a video about stealing. My ex continued to text me like normal every day for 2 weeks after we broke up, something she initiated. Eventually, I ended up telling her, look, you don't want to date, you don't want to be friends, I'm not going to keep making small talk to make you feel better. A week later, she still texted me to wish me a happy birthday. The breakup, according to her, was because I couldn't read the room. This reminds me, my ex broke up with me because I spent Father's Day with my dad. Yes, really, she wanted to hang out at the beach and was mad that I spent the day with my old man. She then proceeded to have a new BF 4 days later, and always tried to rub it in my face whenever we were in the same room. I got sick of it and just stopped talking to her. Fast forward a few years, she finds out my sister took her own life. Well, said ex then proceeds to make my sister's situation about herself and use it to shoehorn her way back into my life. When I realized that, I just stopped talking to her again, and anytime she talked to me, I would just outwardly be cold. Checking into campus housing, when I gave them my last name, fairly uncommon, and the girl says, "Do you mean insert name that rhymes with mine?" It's like, what the freak, are you seriously suggesting I don't know my own name? This is always my experience. Person, misspells my name. Me, actually, it's spelled like this, spells name. Person, no, I'm pretty sure there was an R in it. Me, just with a blank stare. This is my biggest pet peeve. I have people in my firm look up my name to send me an email and misspell my first name in the opening. In turn, I respond by misspelling their first name and signing the email with my name, or I respond back with a shortened version of their name that I know they hate. It's Monday now, and it's happened 3 times today. These people have multiple degrees, but can't pay attention to the details like someone's name. Or, and I'm gonna say this slowly for those in the back, they could be doing it on purpose. Believe it or not, there are some jerks out there that will purposely misspell people's names because they don't like them or they don't feel like they need to learn a name for whatever reason. No thank you, I don't want to work Saturday. Are you doing anything Saturday? No, I just don't want to work Saturday. You contracted me to work weekdays. Anyways, that got me a complaint filed against me for not being a team player. It was my first job after leaving school, so I never really knew how to defend myself from and stand up to office malarkey. At the time, I did do a few Saturdays to appease them, but joined a sports team to give them a reason not to. I have since left for a better job. I worked at a college bookstore while in school and kept working after I graduated. Since I had no more classes, the manager gave me a ton of hours during rush week, which was fine by me, except for the fact that he scheduled me for 11 days in a row, including a Saturday that I told him that I couldn't work ahead of time because I had a prior engagement. When I told him that I wasn't working for 11 days straight with no days off and that I had plans on that Saturday, he asked me, "Do you really have plans, or are you just saying that so you don't have to work all those days straight?" Yes, I do have plans, and even if I didn't, I need some time off. I worked at a big retail place, big yellow tag, blue polo shirts, while at university. One summer, I came up a month early to get some work in. I was a part-timer, but they were short-staffed, so they gave me 40 hours every week. I had previously told them that once school starts, I need to cut down to around 10 hours and only weekends. My first week of school, they scheduled me for 40 hours. I reminded my boss that I couldn't do that, and he said he would fix the schedule on my next shift. My next shift, he gave me a schedule for 30 hours. So I gave him my badge and walked out without even finishing that shift. If they're not gonna respect my time, I'm not gonna respect theirs. Sometimes it's okay to burn a bridge. If you want to hear about how I burned the bridge at my last job, check out the "I Quit in a Blaze of Glory" video here on the Genius channel. After you finish this video, of course. When I was a teenager, I had a crappy part-time job doing telesales for a window company. The boss, Stuart, was an absolute jerk. He was always rude and unpleasant to anyone, and nothing was ever good enough for him. We were meant to work from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., but he would keep us up for another hour afterwards each night, with no overtime pay. One night I was babysitting after work, so I told him that I absolutely must leave on time. He said, "All right." Slightly before 8 p.m., a girl came for a job interview and they went into a private room. 8 p.m. came and went and Stuart did not come out. Eventually, around 8:30 p.m., I popped my head into the interview room door and said, "Stuart, you said I could leave at 8 p.m. It's now 8:30. I need to go." He said, "Fine, leave." The next day I went into work, Stuart immediately fired me for embarrassing him in front of a potential employee. A few days later, a friend, Mike, from the telesales place called me and said that Stuart had been fired. He, Mike, had been made boss, and that I could have my job back if I wanted it. I went back to work and there was Stuart shamefacedly sitting with the other telesales operators. Apparently he had begged for and was given a job in telesales as an operator after being fired as the boss. He was so embarrassed that he couldn't meet our eyes. Needless to say, he remained friendless the entire time he worked there. Hell yeah, screw bosses like Stuart. I had an awesome female boss when I worked at a call center, but she quickly got a better job elsewhere and was replaced by what I assumed was a 40-year-old frat boy. Dude sucks so bad that I quit on him, and to this day it's the only place that I ever quit without putting in my 2 weeks. Also, icing on the cake, a few years later I saw him working at a warehouse store that I used to work at. Guess he wasn't good enough to be manager. I work at a job where I work a week on and a week off. After my week of work, I legit had wedding stuff to do, but we were in a tough spot last month, so I worked 3 extra days, just to help out. I told them after that I'm busy. Well, 2 days later, I get a call from my boss. Boss, hey, I need you to work tonight, alright? Me, I can't, I'm busy the rest of the week. Excuse me? I said I can't, I'm busy the rest of the week. Busy with what, huh? Drinking and partying? What? Who said anything about drinking and partying? My boss legit couldn't wrap his head around the fact that we have lives outside of this job. He legit threatened to not give me my time off that I requested over this. Basically called me a sack of crap for not pitching in. I just worked 3 days overtime, so 10 days in total. I called him out on literally everything he said and he backtracked on it and even apologized. Then says, "You realize I can write you up over this, right?" I said, "Write me up for what? Being busy on my week off? Yeah, that would be dumb." My boss, "Yeah, it would." Get out of here with that crap. What's funny is since that conversation, the word has gotten around about our conversation and apparently he told everyone that he caught me in a big lie about being busy when I wasn't. And that he put me in my place and gave me a stern talking to because I disrespected him. He never caught me in any lie because there was no lie to tell. I also never disrespected him. I made it a point to stay calm as freak during that whole conversation, and to talk to him with respect. I feel like he just wanted to look like a macho boss, but he's going around making it look like he caught me in some big lie that isn't true. I mean, he even apologized. What's sad though is I told him that it sucks to put 5 years here and he basically told me I'm worthless just because I couldn't work one night. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what you're saying. Otherwise, you wouldn't be saying I'm sorry and how can I make it right? By treating me with some decency? How about that? It's crazy to me that it's hard for my boss to believe that after a week of work straight, we might have some crap going on in our own life. It's like in his head, everything is about this job. Sorry, man, but some people have lives outside of work too. We dropped our dog off at the groomer for her usual trim. When I returned 3 hours later, the receptionist returned with a dog that, while adorable, was definitely not our dog. Not the same breed or even the same size. I chuckled and said, "That's definitely not my dog." To which the receptionist thought the appropriate reply was, "Yes, that's Miley. That was her name, but not the same dog. I think I know what my own dog looks like, miss." Well, that's her. If you don't like the cut, you can discuss it with the groomer. That dismissive comment immediately made me lose my patience. Hey, get out from behind that desk and take this dog. We will go back there together and I will show you which dog is mine. I am not going to waste another breath arguing with you. Let's go. I found our Miley. It was the dog that was excited instead of confused when they saw me. I ended up getting that grooming for free. I was a CSR for a popular pizza chain and was handed a phone with an angry customer on the other line. They were complaining about having their pizza messed up, and I asked them what they ordered. Over the next few minutes, their story kept on changing. At first it was the sauce, and then it was the toppings, and then they were missing a side. I called them out on it, and I told him to go scam some other restaurant. Needless to say, he got only one F-bomb in before I hung up on him. My one rule of thumb is to never disrespect the people that handle your food, because you just might end up with some extra ingredients if you piss them off. When I found out about my ex-husband's last affair, he had several, I told him to open his iPad and start looking for a place to stay, as he sure as hell wasn't going to be staying in the house. He sat there and just looked at me like I was joking. I said, "Your fingers aren't broken, start typing away and find a place. I can either pack your bag for you and it will be done in 3 seconds, or you can pack it yourself." I said, "You have 3 choices, the car, the gutter, or find a friend." He then stood up and made his way to the bedroom to pack. Said he can stay at a friend's house. I said, "I don't care where you stay, it just won't be here." He moved in with the last affair that he had the following day. Yeah, that would be the day I quit my 16-year-old job, because they informed me that the money earmarked for my recovery from a work-related stress was for other people who might need it, and I would have to start paying out of pocket. After 10 minutes of chewing the HR rep out over the phone about how I was done and how horrible that place had become, and how I never wanted to see or hear from anyone there again, I got, "So what time will you be back in the office?" All I could do was hang up the phone, thank the therapist I could no longer afford, and go home. I never set foot in that office again. It was frankly one of the best days of my life, but a definite did I stutter moment. I was working at Wally World and a customer was on his phone from the start of the transaction. Do not do this. Placed a big package of toilet paper on the belt. I told him that it was $10 even. He was still on his phone and handed me a $10 bill. I gave him his receipt and he walked away. Right before he walked out, he noticed that I didn't give him any change and he tried to argue with me that I didn't tell him that it was $10 and he wanted a refund. I sent him to customer service because I couldn't give him a refund even if I wanted to, and he mumbled under his breath that I was a dumb bee. I replied, "It's not my fault that you were on your phone." He turned his head and said, "What did you say?" I slammed my hands down on the countertop and said loud and clear, "I said it's not my fault you were on your phone." He took a step back and left, and I went on my break. Worth it. Not me who said it, and it wasn't in a rude context, but I went on a date with the guy and tickets were cheap that night. As I was pulling out my wallet to pay for my ticket, he stopped me and says, "Nah, I got it." I asked him if he was sure and he says, "Did I stutter?" What makes that funny to this day is he did have a stutter, so when he said that, it was smooth as hell. Cosplayers of Reddit, what's the cringiest interaction you've had at an event? By the way, there's going to be a lot of character names in this video. I apologize in advance if I say them wrong. Was cosplaying Black Cat from Spider-Man. It was a very tight and form-fitting costume, and I opted not to wear underwear because you could very clearly see the lines in the costume if I did. Had some guy come up behind me and unzip my suit, which wouldn't have been so bad if the zipper didn't go all the way down to the bottom of my butt. For 10 seconds, my pale back and butt were very exposed. Dude, this is 100% not okay. Yeah, and the security was non-existent. It was just staff, mostly female, and nothing was done. It was a cute little con, and it was in its first year, I think. They didn't know what to expect, and it probably wasn't that. Unless you're going to a major convention, I'd expect security and staff to be pretty bad. I would assume most of the budget would go to securing talent for the cons, so the rest is a free-for-all. But screw the guy that did this to this cosplayer. I witnessed a sussy bear cosplay that is associated with kidnapping children throw a little girl over his shoulder and run off. Little girl was fine, but later told me and the group that we had been dancing with she didn't know the guy, so that's pretty sus. It was probably some idiot being in character for laughs. That said, he's lucky he didn't get killed. Jesus, dude, you're going to pretend to kidnap a child? Yeah, this type of behavior at cons is all too common and needs to stop. I think it's gotten better over the years, at least I hope it has, but being in character half the time feels like an excuse for people to be creepy or jerks. Looking at you, weird Deadpools. So I went to my first con a few years ago. I wasn't brave enough to dress up, so I wanted to take pics instead. I saw a really amazing Doctor Who cosplay, so I asked him for a hug and a pic. He was really enthusiastic about it, and we had a pic ready to go until I heard a gruff, "Hurry up, other people want a hug too." This large middle-aged lady in a tight tank top was giving us this glare. Legit, the cosplayer went from happy to miserable as soon as we took the pic. Like, holy cow, these cosplayers aren't props, they're people. Don't demand physical contact, you have to ask. He definitely didn't give up a hug for her. On the bright side, this year I will be doing a dress-up cosplay, and I hope that it'll be fine. I dressed up as the 11th Doctor at San Diego Comic-Con one year, and I saw a vendor wearing a fez, and so I said, "Nice fez," in passing. But I thought he didn't hear me, so I just walked by him. But then I heard a sonic screwdriver noise from behind me, and it was the guy with the fez, and I used my sonic to signal back. It was pretty awesome. This was kinda cringy and hilarious. So at my first con, I was dressed as Silk Spectre 2, comic book version. I was still using my cane because I was only a year out from my accident. This guy decides that obviously I'm his one true love or something, and I'm not able to hustle away fast enough to escape easily. I lose him a few times, but he keeps popping up and hitting on me, and making comments about how I should have been Silk Spectre 1. This is at least 2 or 3 hours of this Romeo following me around. Well, somehow I managed to lose him, and I end up asking this beefy old dude if he minds that I take the preoccupied chair at his table, since my hips and legs are acting up. Half an hour later, we are chatting and having a good old time when my Romeo shows up. Romeo looks at me, Romeo looks at beefy old guy looks at me, and I guess I must have looked scared or creeped out or something, because the beefy old guy stands up and leans real close to Romeo's face and says, "Can I help you with something?" Romeo screws off. I eventually get up and walk away when the table gets busy. Then I glance at the banner above the table as I walk away. Beefy old guy was Lou Ferrigno. Dude, I absolutely love con stories like this. I remember another time when I was at San Diego Comic-Con, I was just looking at some random DC figures that were supposed to come out later that year. To my surprise, some dude stands right next to me looking at the same figures. So I kind of catch him out of the corner of my eye, and when I turn to look at him, it's one of the goats of comic book writing, Jeff Johns. My stupid face asks, "Are you Jeff Johns?" And with a smile, he responds, "Yup." I told him that he was a huge inspiration to my writing, and I got a pic. Dude was super cool, even if Snyder Bros would tell you otherwise. I was cosplaying a popular children's show character, Buster from Arthur. A mom tried flirting with me in front of her child after taking the photo. "What you doing later? Wanna grab a coffee?" But the worst thing I've seen? This guy fully walks up to this girl and cups her booba. He wanted to see if they were real. I don't get why there aren't more people getting punched in the face at these cons, because that's exactly what I would do if some random person came up and groped me. I've never been to a con, I'd love to go and cosplay, but I'm afraid of people doing stuff like that, especially after reading this thread of some of the stories. Those kind of things are rare. If you're curious about it, find a friend to go with you. Also, most cons have security and are very clear about harassment policies. They can and will kick out creeps if you report them. Went to a con as Zuko from Avatar. An Aang cosplayer approached me excitedly to talk about the show, but after 10 minutes, pulled out his phone and wanted me to read his X-rated Avatar fanfic. Proceeded to tell me how long he had been working on the fanfic and how he was planning out the rest of the story to have books like the show itself. This thing looked to be novel length by this point. I politely excused myself and left. But this guy later found me on Facebook and sends me NSFW Avatar fan art every now and then. Okay, this is a PSA for all spicy content enjoyers. Some of y'all really need to learn when and when not to talk about spicy content. Learn to read the room, as some would say. I love me some spicy content, but I'm definitely not talking to a person I just met about those interests. Come on, y'all. I had some small cake pieces with me for friends, carried it in an open plastic box in my hands. In the tram to the convention, I met an older lady. We started talking about my costume and what all these funny looking people were here for and so on. While I explained it to her, she was suddenly looking for something in her handbag, pulled out a small plastic spoon and helped herself to my cake while listening to me. I was too confused to say anything and let her finish. I even jumped out of the tram a station earlier because I was worried about more of the cake being eaten. It's a weird story, but looking back now, I should have offered her more. I don't know what it takes for you to eat a stranger's cake in a tram without asking first if you can have some. This is just bizarre. Makes me wonder what her life looks like. Maybe she eats from other plates and tables at restaurants too. Joey doesn't share food! Can I be the cringe? I cosplayed as Naruto when I was 13, and a Sasuke cosplayer who was 14 quote-unquote made out with me, which was basically biting my mouth. It went semi-viral on YouTube to the point where I was offered money. I had forgotten about that video until that email, and then decimated my whole YouTube account when I was 15 or 16. Good lord, I was a horrible weeb, and I have so many stories. A few years back, my then girlfriend was cosplaying Cell from Portal at a con. It was mostly great. Everyone and their mom wanted a photo with her, except this one guy who decided to grill her on how much she really knew about Portal. He was looking at her like he had just found a unicorn. but she was pissed as hell that some stranger thought she needed to prove herself to him. I think he thought it was flirting. Guys, you really need to stop doing this to women. Actually, you just need to stop doing this to anyone. No one should have to prove their fandom to you. And if you are just trying to ask a question, keep it to 1, maybe 2 questions max. If they aren't asking you questions as well, they probably don't want to talk that much. I was cosplaying as Red X from Teen Titans, and I had this 16-year-old girl dressed up as Raven follow me around trying to give me a kiss all day. I was 20 at the time. And no, I didn't kiss her, by the way. I dressed up as Edward Elric. My friend was dressed as Envy from FMA. The show was still super popular back then, and glomping was a thing. Some girl ran up behind me at top speed and jumped on my back. And I'm tall, not short like Ed, and bashed me into a table and brought me to my knees. It was horribly embarrassing and painful. What's glomping? Sounds spicy. Glomping is essentially when someone runs at you full speed and jumps into your arms, or jumps on your back and clings on. Some people even do it without their target knowing it's going to happen, and you get the result of the OP here. It's usually posted around in generic rules listing at big conventions, no glomping, along with cosplay is not consent. There's this YouTuber with millions of followers that got famous for this said glomping. Or at least that's what it seems like. I personally can't stand this creator because I feel like this type of content enables other people to do it at cons. For all I know, they could be a cool person, but they do come off as extremely annoying in those videos. Also, if someone dove at me at full speed, you're getting a Kenny Omega knee to the face. More funny than cringy, but my husband doesn't really attend cons anymore because he feels he's too old for them. Before he stopped going, we attended Anime Central in 2002 in Chicago. We passed by a group of Harry Potter cosplayers wearing striped scarves, and my husband turned to me and said, "It's good to know the kids still like Doctor Who." Some girl asked me to sing a duet in the karaoke room, which I agreed to. 30 seconds in, and I realized that it's some anime song that is sung in Japanese, and it's 8 minutes long. It was the longest and most cringiest 8 minutes of my life while butchering the Japanese language in front of an audience. Not really cosplay, but at the midnight showing of the last Harry Potter movie, I was dressed in a Slytherin t-shirt with my house scarf. I was standing with some friends and some girl came up to me and said that I was everything that was wrong with this world. I asked what she was talking about and she yelled, "Anyone who truly likes Slytherin is a bane on humanity!" I just stared as her friends took her away. At Anime Matsuri last month, I was cross-playing as Prompto, with my friend as Noctis, a much younger Noctis cosplayer. They looked to be around 13 or 14, whereas we were in our mid-20s, came up to us and said that their Prompto really wanted to meet us. We followed this fellow cosplayer over to their group of friends, introduced ourselves to the other Prompto, and took some selfies and had some laughs. Apparently, the kids felt super comfortable around us because they then proceeded to pull out their sketchbooks and show us some explicit fan art they had drawn while loudly describing each spicy scene in detail. Needless to say, my friend and I exchanged a look of abject horror and hightailed it out of there, torn between feeling utterly skeevy and biting down the urge to call their mothers. Obviously, there are kids who wander into the not safe for work side of a fandom, but to have literal children showing me the stuff that they drew in real life was positively jarring. I cosplayed as Skull Kid last year. I don't know how it is at American Comic-Cons, but in my country there is a lot of people with signs like free hugs, and sometimes they do it without asking. If this wasn't cringy already, since I 3D printed my mask, the pointy ends were, well, very pointy. When some weeb hugged me without asking, they usually got stabbed by the mask and laughed in an uncomfortable way and ended running off after the hug as soon as possible. I was dressed as Mermaid Man from SpongeBob, and I went up to a table to buy a poster, and this guy was like, "Hey, there's Barnacle Boy here." I said, "Where?" Because I saw no Barnacle Boy at the con yet. He said, "You." And everyone laughed because they didn't realize I wasn't Barnacle Boy and they thought I forgot what my costume was. Screw that guy, I was Mermaid Man. Went to a con with my girlfriend, who was dressed as Black Canary. I was Green Arrow. Naturally, some people asked of pictures of us or with us. Alright, cool, no big deal. What was weird was the number of guys that wanted a picture with just her. One guy even came up, asked if he could take a picture with us, and after we agreed, he handed me the camera. Oh, okay, I see what's happening here. But the cringiest moment was this one guy, maybe 20 years older than us. He asked for a picture of her. We were used to it at this point, so it's whatever. Then proceeds to spend about a good 60 seconds taking the photo. I don't know if he was taking multiple photos or if he was trying to get the perfect booba picture or what. But ain't no way it takes a full minute to take a single photo on a cell phone. Still, the day was super fun and hopefully we get the chance to go back in the future. Man, I wish I could say that cons don't have the creepy guys that take photos, but they are out there and they usually look like the mental picture of the creepy guy that you have in your head. I go to Dragon Con with my wife and like to take photos. Sometimes when I ask cosplay couples for a picture, the guy will usually say, "Did you want me or just her?" And I'm like, of course I want you, come on. I always feel bad for those dudes. Like, how many skeezy guys must be coming up and asking for pictures of just the girl? What a weird thing to do. See, I told you, some weird dudes with cameras at every con. I dressed up as Rose Quartz from Steven's Universe, and a neckbeard type guy sort of dressed as a character from the same show approached me by coming up right behind me and said, "Rose, you're my waifu," while I was talking to a vendor. He had the greasiest hair I've ever seen and really bad BO. He asked for a picture and I said okay, and then he asked me to pose like I was kissing his cheek, and I said no. He got upset and said that I had to because he loved Rose, blah 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 blah, and I didn't know how to disengage. Funnily enough, a Pearl cosplayer intervened and told him to beat it. I've never seen Steven's Universe, but if this is how all the characters act in the show, this is a pretty funny interaction. I dressed as Junkrat for a con, and at the time I had no idea how many kids played Overwatch. So for the entire day, all I got was 10-year-olds shouting references and wanting photos with me, and their parents giving me really strange looks. I cosplayed Frankenfurter from the Rocky Horror Picture Show at a Comic-Con about a year ago. I had a lot of pleasant interactions with other cosplayers during the day. Lots of, "Ooh, I love that movie," "Hey, do the time warp," sort of conversations. A few people hit on me. I'm a woman in fishnets and a corset at a Comic-Con. I was expecting that. Nothing too weird or uncomfortable. And then there was this one dude and his friend. They kept following me around, talking to me about weird personal topics and getting far too handsy. Eventually I started to get nervous, so I excused myself to the bathroom. I just wanted to distance myself from them a little bit. As I go to leave, the guy goes, "Wait! Before you go, can I get a picture?" Okay, fine, just take the photo and then leave me alone. So the guy grabs me, picks me up and throws me over his shoulder so my butt is sticking up in the air, in fishnets and bikini bottoms. And his buddy takes a photo. Then he drops me back on the ground and the two guys take off. It all happened in about 10 seconds, so I barely had time to react. Some guy dressed as Deadpool helped me up and walked me to the security booth to report the guys. But nothing came of it. So that was weird, cringy, and terrifying. I don't cosplay Frank anymore. Dude, I hate this and screw those guys. I hate how people have the ability to just ruin something for people by their actions that they make. Shout out to Deadpool for helping out the OP. Oh man, myself and a few friends occasionally go to cons just to hang out, drink, and buy some merch. But I'll never forget a local con in the early fall of 2008. We usually never go in cosplay, but Guru Login was still in a fever pitch of popularity at the time, and one of my friends was really big on it, and went dressed as Kamina while the rest of us went in regular clothes. It's worth noting that said particular friend is a decent looking 6'4" fellow and was training for a marathon at the time, so he pulled off a pretty damn Kamina. This turned into a day from nerd hell. From the moment we walked into the main hall, he was assaulted in nearly every manner by girl and guy alike. Tons of people wanted pictures with him or of him posing. Endless pictures, and countless times random girls, and a couple of guys, would run out of nowhere and jump onto him, which resulted more often than not, him nearly dragged to the ground by those random attackers. I can actually still remember to this day, one girl screaming, "Kamina-san, I love you!" as she flung herself at my friend. He did his damnedest to be nice and friendly for the pictures, while the rest of us spent more time acting as impromptu bodyguards for him than enjoying the convention. Needless to say, he doesn't care much to cosplay these days. I will say cosplay is fun, but you have to mentally prepare for it. I did a group X-Men cosplay one year, classic cartoon X-Men, and people loved it. We took a bunch of photos, but one thing that I wasn't prepared for was the people in my group wanting to shop and get free stuff. I was in cosplay, I wasn't at the con trying to hold anything other than my cosplay props. Needless to say, there was a little bit of tension in the group after group cosplay day. The only time I ever cosplayed, I cosplayed as one of the Love Live characters' school uniforms. Blazer, white dress shirt, really short skirt. Literally 5 minutes after showing up to the convention, I turned around on the escalator and caught the dude behind me trying to look up my skirt. Let me go ahead and share my own personal cringe story that actually involves me. Now, I often consider myself someone who can talk or have a conversation with anybody, but it's usually in a chill and comfortable setting. San Diego Comic-Con is neither of those things. It's hectic and crowded. This cringe interaction happened a few years ago. I was randomly walking by a booth and I saw this cosplayer that I follow on social media. She wasn't currently talking to anyone, so I figured why not try and start up a conversation. So I decided to ask her about cosplay, and at this moment she was wearing a green version of a Playboy bunny outfit, which is a pretty common thing at cons, but they're usually combined with a character. I tell her that I enjoyed her work and I was curious if she planned on doing any DC comic characters in the future because I haven't seen her do many. It's at this moment that I want to say she responded with a kind of sarcastic maybe, but that's when some dude wanted a picture with her, so I just said bye and left. I personally felt like the convo was a bit awkward, probably because during the whole conversation I was telling myself not to be the guy that overstays their welcome, which you see a lot at cons. So I just tried to make a quick conversation, which was bad. Anyways, I end up getting on social media later in the day and I see that she posted a photo of herself at the con. Turns out the Playboy bunny outfit that she was wearing was a version of Poison Ivy, a DC character. She even had a small little plant-like prop with her to show that she was Poison Ivy. I just completely face-palmed when I realized what I had asked her earlier in the day, and it made sense why her response felt kinda sarcastic. Definitely not my brightest moment. What went away because of smartphones? Portable MP3 players. I used to work in a warehouse and we weren't allowed to have our cell phones with us. Well, no devices with any cameras on them. We were allowed to listen to music and have one headphone in one ear. Everyone who worked there had a cheap MP3 player for that reason. It's more niche now, but there's definitely still a market for those. Audiophiles also love to have separate devices for several reasons. While iPhones are slightly better about it, Android is actually awful about playing high quality sound files, and streaming services chew through data if you want hi-fi sound. But a dedicated music player, especially if you splurge and get something like a FiO with the DAC in it, that's the good stuff. Even refurbished iPods have a decently sized market these days, although that's partially due to collectors too. Man, as I get older, I'm kind of happy that I got to experience the different eras of music, from Walkmans, aka CD players, to MP3 players, to now smartphones. To be honest, I love music, but I never really thought about how smartphones could affect the quality. I always thought it was more about the headphones you use to listen to the music. But hey, the more you know. Payphones. One day I was walking my daughter, who was 5 at the time. We came across an old payphone and she asked me what it was. I explained to her and she started laughing and said, "Mommy, they don't just put phones out in the park." It does sound absurd, but we did put them out in parks and plenty of other places. I think the last time I saw one was right outside of the local library. They were the last people to get rid of theirs. The ability to memorize phone numbers. I don't know my spouse's phone number, but I still remember the phone number of my best friend from the 1st grade. Totally had this conversation with my client today. I work with these teens. Turns out many of them don't save numbers in their phones, but end up learning the numbers and who the people are. Their reasoning? If for some reason something happens and they don't have their phone, they at least have the people's numbers by memory. Growing up in the late 70s and early 80s, my stepdad was involved in a lot of politics and labor union stuff. Dude knew pretty much everyone involved with that, in our city of about 500,000. And as far as I could tell, he had most of their phone numbers memorized. You could ask him random names, he'd sit there, think for a few seconds, and rattle off a phone number. This was when you didn't have to memorize an area code, so you just needed 7 digits, but still, it was pretty impressive. It's crazy how much you can remember if you actually train your brain to do so. I used to work retail, and at the time, I could have told you the number to any piece of produce if you needed to ring it up at the register. I also had about 90% of the store memorized, so I could tell you exactly where you needed to go to get something. It's all about repetition. Road maps, calculators, camcorders, privacy. The best part of every road trip when I was younger was when my sister was holding the map and then it got sucked out the window within the first 2 hours of the trip. Every damn time. Standalone GPS units for cars are fairly non-existent now. Yeah, but they seem to be huge for semi-truck drivers. You can go into most truck stops and they're still selling them from behind the glass for a few $100s to over $1,000. It's crazy. They let you put in height, weight, length, and even if you're hazmat. It's not like a TomTom. It has really everything you need to go anywhere in the country. I've never lost service with the standalone GPS. And if you're a local guy like me, you still need to figure out what signs you can ignore and what signs mean you're gonna screw up your whole damn life. It's worth $1,000 all day. The house phone with the cord that you can twirl up while you were talking. And later the cordless phone that you could never find until it rang. I always knew where the cordless phone was and was reluctant to get rid of them simply because they were useful for calling my lost smartphone. Radio Shack and other stores where you would buy cameras, stereos, and recorders. This could be a consequence of internet shops rather than mobile smartphones. Dodgy UFO sightings and the Loch Ness Monster. Don't forget Bigfoot! Phone books, notepads, cameras for everyday people. Maps, atlases, the list goes on. Well, paper notebooks are actually still having record sales. My wife is a list person and she has notebooks all over the place. Using a dictionary to find meanings of words. When I was a kid, my mom would tell me that if I didn't know how to spell a word, then I should look it up in the dictionary. Even as a kid, I thought that advice was silly. How can I find a word that I don't know how to spell? Situational awareness. Drove out on an errand yesterday. Every single person walking, jogging with headphones, mother pushing baby in a stroller, dog owner walking with their dog, were all on their phones and not paying attention to their surroundings. This is actually the best comment in this thread. You forgot about the people actively piloting cars while their eyes are on their freaking phones. T9 texting. Dude, I think I have a vague memory of what T9 texting was and I never bothered to learn it. Would the equivalent today be like swipe texting? That's pretty popular. Printed MapQuest pages. Now that is a blast from the past. I totally remember having to print out MapQuest stuff. More than 10 years ago, I made a list of physical devices that have been replaced by apps on my phone. And here's the list. Narrator here. The list was pretty long and I kinda just wanted to talk about some of the comments that were attached to the list. Oddly enough, books seem to be the first one to really reverse on going digital. For as much as I like my Kindle for travel, I still much rather have a physical book. See vinyl for music. It's probably due to the eyesore from reading from a digital screen, and the experience of being immersed into picking up a book without distractions. E-readers might solve the eye strain issue, but nothing beats reading print. Just the joy of turning the page to find out what happens next rather than pressing a button to flip to the next page, or the joy of placing a bookmark to come back the next day. There used to be so many different artistic cover arts. All these trivial things add up to the reader's immersion. Yeah, printed books are such a better experience. I am someone who likes to highlight certain things in books, mostly just books where I learn things. And I'm sure there are apps that will let you do that as well on phones, but nothing beats just flipping through a book and seeing the bright highlighted paragraphs. It's just so much easier to find important things. One word, encyclopedias. Bar arguments. No, Player X was the MVP in 1984. They're so easily solvable now. A fun 2-hour debate now lasts 9 to 14 seconds. I used to work with this loudmouth guy in the mid-2000s that would spout off made-up facts and figures during our lunch breaks. That grounded to a halt once one of us got smartphones by 2008 and just fact-checked on the spot using Google. I will say this doesn't really work with pathological liars though. They'll just say, well, I did it, or the website's wrong. Actual buttons. Rest in peace, BlackBerry. The need to just pick a random restaurant in an unfamiliar area and hope it doesn't suck. Also being restricted to only listening to what music is on the radio or on a CD in your car. For real. The younger generation will never know the hype of hearing your favorite song playing on the radio when you knew you couldn't just listen to it at any moment. Bonus thing the younger generation will never have to deal with is having to watch reruns of an anime hoping that you get the next episode. I can't tell you how many times that I saw Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z get his arm broken by Android 18 to only find out that the whole show resets back to episode 1. But man, that moment we finally got the next episode was so hype. Reading magazines while pooping. But if you've ever seen those videos about what happens when you flush a toilet, those magazines must be disgusting. At least you can clean the surface of your phone pretty easily. Photo development departments in stores. As someone who used to work in a photo place from time to time, this is probably for the best. You don't know how often people would go into a photo center trying to print copyrighted material, and we would have to turn them away and they usually got mad. Also, there was plenty of people that wanted to get their spicy photos printed at the store too. It was wild. Teens' mental health. I'd like to counter with everyone's mental health. Simply enjoying a moment. I went to a show last night and so many people were watching the show through their phone screens while recording it. In between sets, so many people would pull out their phones and watch TikToks and whatnot. Some even did this while the band was performing. I left my phone in my bag for the entirety of this show. I may not have captured memories, but I felt I was more involved with what was happening than those who couldn't set their phone aside for 5 minutes. It's the truth, and I'm happy I realized a good decade plus ago. I don't know why, but I love watching people take videos of fireworks. Just enjoy the fireworks. You're not going to rewatch the video. Honestly, even at sporting events, I see people on their phones mid-game. Sometimes just videotaping plays, or literally just scrolling through social media. I get unnecessarily annoyed by people recording fireworks. Fireworks are this full sensory experience of sound, size, and sight. It's a feeling in your body even. A phone video won't capture 95% of that experience. There has to be something more than just pointless recording. And fireworks have to be the top one for me. Unless, of course, it's a fireworks show gone wrong and they all explode at once. Now that's awesome. I will say, phones have helped us expose just how dumb people really are. I feel like every year there is a video of someone blowing off their hands with firecrackers. They explode, people. Don't hold them in your hands. The phrase, "you won't have a calculator in your pocket in the real world." Accidentally getting lost and finding something cool that you normally wouldn't have been able to experience. The expectation that you will be unreachable. The privilege of not picking up the phone and the person who called would assume that you weren't there. Nothing like when someone answered the phone and you just had to wave to that person to tell them you weren't home. Those were the days. Just enjoying the moment. Anytime me and my girlfriend are doing something nice together, she always wants to grab a picture or make a post on Instagram. If I kick up a fuss, she'll tell me that she's capturing the moment. But now the moment is tainted with distraction. I have physically wrestled my sister's phone away from her at family gatherings because she was incapable of not doing this, and using it to text updates / pictures to friends and family about what we were doing at that moment. And if you think that sounds like normal teenage behavior, you should probably know that my sister just turned 50 this year. This is a double-edged sword in my opinion because I have 2 aunts that do the same thing. They love taking photos. Not necessarily for social media, but just in general. It can be annoying, but it's also nice that someone is taking photos while everyone else can enjoy the party. Plus, those photos can easily be shared through digital albums. People talking to each other while eating. My father always had his attention on the newspaper during breakfast, and before smartphones, I spent so long reading books while eating that I still in a habit of eating one-handed as though I'm holding a book. Bro, ain't that the truth? Nowadays, people look at YouTube before eating rather than talking to people, or watching whatever's on TV at the moment. Every little thing we do is in our control, and it's hard to control. My sister-in-law's husband is notorious at this. He will spend all dinner with his face in his phone watching stuff, most of the time without headphones on. And often at a restaurant, so she'll order his drinks and meals like he's a 5-year-old. Or if we try to even ask him a question, he'll just ignore it. We'll have a conversation with her, then he'll interrupt whatever it is we're talking about, important or not, just to show her what's on his phone. And if she doesn't immediately answer, he'll say, "Did you hear what I said?" Or he'll just be a supremely butthead and say, "You always ignore me." Now a lot of this is because he gets away with it, and my sister-in-law enables it. And then there's the part where he's just a huge jerk. I got two things I want to say on these comments. One, if you say the phrase my sister-in-law's husband, doesn't that make them your brother? Why not just say my brother? And two, what I think the original comment might have meant was people actually having conversations at dinner, for example, on a date. Things have gotten so bad that people play a game at restaurants where the first person to touch their phone has to pay for the bill. I would say if games like that are having to be created, phones are a problem. Patience. You used to have to look up a phone number, call someone, leave a message, and wait for them to call you back. Everything now is instant. People have completely lost all patience with each other, along with human decency. Knocking on doors when you get to someone's house. In America, that'll get you shot now, apparently. Horizontal videos. I hate vertical videos with a damn passion. My biggest screens are horizontal, people. You are denying clarity for those watching anywhere else outside of their phone. Also, I hate watching videos on my phone. Okay, I don't really have a dog in this fight, but I will say, the one thing that does annoy me about vertical videos is that they don't look nice when displayed. If you don't know what I mean, go check your YouTube sub box at some point, and if you're subscribed to someone who does shorts, the thumbnails for those videos are all lame. YouTube is starting to notice this by adding tabs to separate the content, but it needs to happen a lot faster. Humanity, manners, and the ability to listen to someone who disagrees with you. The coming age of boys that will never know the joy of finding a random spicy magazine. Newspapers. Been in the industry for a while, and it's unfortunately dying slowly. Daily circulation numbers are pathetic. Most store copies are returned and dozens of jobs lost just this year. It's a real shame. People's brains, sanity, drive, and a few other things. In return, we got 24/7 hour tracking. Not a good deal if I say so myself. My ability to drive without getting road rage. Every mother freaker that cuts me off and slows down or nearly swerves into me from the other lane, they're on their freaking phones. People who read books. Not necessarily all of them, but I rarely ever see them around anymore, and it's kinda sad. Imagination. Now I could see how phones do hurt imagination, but I've always had this theory that some people have imagination and others don't. I've always been curious how many substance users have imagination before using substances. I feel like that may be their first experience with imagination because they're usually going on some kind of trip. Conversations. Sure, everyone texts more than ever, but people don't seem to talk face to face. I see so many people standing next to each other looking at their phones, probably texting each other. The smartphone replaced the cigarette. We used to all sit around and smoke and talk to each other. I miss sitting for hours smoking and talking. That era is gone. Glad cigs are basically gone though. Lung disease is terrible, but we all lost convos along the way. I'm pretty sure that type of conversation still exists. People have just replaced cigarettes with other things. Decent games to a degree. The casual gaming genre picked up and moved to mobile, then it began to suck. Think back to the glory days of playing Plants vs. Zombies or Fish Tycoon on the computer. When it picked up and moved to mobile, it didn't immediately suck. Some casual games were mostly the same, just cheaper and touchscreen. Also, some new concepts utilize gyro and touchscreen controls in some cool ways. Doodle Jump, Fruit Ninja, stuff like that. But when data/Wi-Fi connections became more accessible, Facebook browsing games came to mobile. Think Farmville, Dragon City, Candy Crush. The free-to-play model took over, and now you're hard-pressed to find a decent offline game for mobile anymore. The classics are hardly even available, since they began to lack support for the newest Android/iOS update and were steadily removed from the App Store. Try and find Plant Tycoon, the original Angry Birds, or anything awesome you remember from the Advent casual mobile games. It's most certainly gone. It's probably been terribly recreated and made into a free-to-play model now. All I have to say in this argument is Konami, the company that created one of the greatest video game series ever in Metal Gear Solid, said that they were going to focus on mobile games aggressively. When free games like Fortnite are bringing in millions, why bother with great story games, right? It's sad, but true. Ability to speak in younger generations. I have two nephews, 18 and 15 years old. They can't fathom the idea of picking up the phone to call someone, to maybe order food, make a reservation, or even worse, calling your crush's house and not knowing who's going to pick up the phone. The genuine sense of panic they have just thinking about the world with no texting is just as alien to them as the sense of panic for calling is alien to me. To be fair here, I will say I've never been a fan of having to call to make an appointment or something like that. It's not the idea of talking to another person, it's when they ask you a question you don't have an answer to. Like if it has to deal with insurance or some type of bank number that you don't know. I just don't like the awkwardness that comes with it, and they're like, well, we kind of need that, and I'm like, I don't know how to get that, man. That's what I don't like about phone calls. People at the library. Not only has book reading diminished, but people used to go to the library to get online. Now that phones do that, libraries just seem almost deserted. Men having the balls to approach a woman they're interested in. That has nothing to do with smartphones, my guy. The plots of a lot of 90s sitcoms. There is a Sex and the City episode that comes to mind where the plot of the episode revolves around two characters waiting at separate entrances of a building, each thinking the other stood them up. The plot doesn't hold up at all in modern times because someone would have called or texted and they would have found each other in minutes. When two impatient people try to meet, they still end up not finding each other no matter how good technology gets. Character 1 texting, "Where are you?" Character 2, "Where are you? I'm at the entrance." Character 1, "No, I'm at the entrance." "Nice gaslighting attempt though," blocks character 1. Character 2, "Tell me where you are right now. Hey, talk to me. Pick up the phone, please. Fine." Man, just thinking about it, if that sequence was in TV, that would be horrible. I think I'd rather go with the approach of the 90s sitcom. One thing I haven't seen on this list, but I think is definitely aided by the rise of smartphones, is customer service. Maybe it's because texting seems to be the younger generation's preferred form of communication, but I swear, customer service has never been as bad as I've seen it today. Also, I worked retail for over 5 years, so I know how much it can suck and how you just want to quit at all times. But I still tried to provide people with helpful service, especially if someone was cool or nice. But nowadays, people just stare at you like they're dead inside and want you to leave as fast as possible so they could check their phone again. It just kinda sucks. That's it for this video. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Link at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. It's linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching and we'll see you guys next time.